know, Charles, you may not realize this about me, but I love the film Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's why I picked it. I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Hillary and the Bandit, of course. She's got a band of bandits that she's normally hanging out with.
Yeah, it's really, again, hats off to the art department. And this was a great movie. It is a great movie.
We lost Burt Reynolds not long ago. That was too bad.
And it's really sad to see in real life the role that this man, Mr. Mueller, has. As I guess you were saying earlier, that he's the second longest ever serving head of the FBI, and he's somebody who, under his watch from September 4th, 2001 to September 4th, 2013, somehow managed to miss the Tsarnaev brothers, the gigantic expansion of the Clinton Foundation fraud, even though he was personally briefed, and we know this from a link that we've shown before. He managed to miss obvious fraud, and so he was rewarded by being asked by, I guess, Barack Obama to extend his term. You know, and how, we're going to talk about it in some considerable depth today, but how he was magically appointed as special counsel to investigate something that isn't a crime is one of the, you know, the Earth's remaining unsolved mysteries. I mean, it's just amazing.
It's more of a conundrum than Ancient Aliens, Charles.
I like that show, Ancient Aliens.
I know, I like that too. Makes a lot of sense to me, Ancient Aliens. But, so, I mean, obviously they're not just missing this stuff. It does seem to be that there's a growing array of evidence to indicate that these guys deliberately ignored this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all, we've talked about this on previous shows, but I think this whole game of unregulated globalism creates employment and personal enrichment and political opportunities for anybody who gets around these massive, unchecked flows of money that go either to national governments or multilateral governments or out to foundations. And you're sitting there in law enforcement at the highest levels. I mean, I think the people who are line-based law enforcement, line-based security agent type people, those people, you know, deserve our undying gratitude for the hard work they do. But then you get into the management level, and these management creeps, it seems, get access to dirt and competitive information that's enormously valuable. So people watch as, you know, obviously the heads of the agencies then find themselves in the employ of global media concerns, global investment firms, global hedge funds, global multinationals. And it's not lost on, you know, many of these people that your highest pay is maybe 180 or whatever it is at the FBI and the CIA, but you follow Mueller's path, you follow Comey's path, you follow the Clinton path. Who knows, you may start going on boards. You may start giving speeches, you get honoraria and all this kind of stuff, and suddenly, you know, you're monetizing your public service. And so this Mueller guy in particular, it'd be one thing if there was just a single questionable aspect to his track record here, but the stuff that is alleged that was going on involving that Boston case with the FBI and the Irish mob and all that, the IRA people, his false conviction.
Is that Whitey Bulger?
Whitey Bulger and the FBI agents in Boston who apparently were crooked, and the degree to which Mueller may have protected those people and falsely or been involved in something where people were falsely imprisoned, died in prison, where the government ultimately had to pay a large settlement, many millions of dollars. You know, granted, people as U.S. attorneys and FBI head, you're going to be involved in a lot of cases, and, you know, maybe a majority of them turned out well, but there are just too many cases, too many instances involving Robert Mueller and his history where it seems that the Clintons were protected and or Mueller missed massive things. It's just there are too many cases like that, and so therefore it doesn't make sense to me that under the new Trump administration, whoever was watching Trump's back watched it closely enough to allow Mueller to slip into this special counsel role, to allow Sessions in, to allow Rosenstein in, and to allow this mess to persist in the way it has persisted for so long are all very questionable.
Charles, do we have any explanation why Rat Rodenstein is off the Ortel barbecue grill and on Air Force One. That was a surprise, wasn't it? Why is he there?
Well, the suspicion, we're not going to name the people's names, but you know of, you met one of these people who's one of my closest friends and a good, very smart guy. The suspicion he and I share is that perhaps Rodenstein has already been turned. Perhaps, you know, tough conversations went to him and said, listen, dude, I mean...
It's jail or
no, you're
get on
smoked.
board.
You're smoked. I mean, because we know that this guy Priestap, and we know now Baker, who had been in senior roles in the FBI, they've already come onto the white hat side of the table. And Donald Trump has been now president for a while. He's had a time to find his feet. And I think people around this mess who know the true state of affairs know how to read tea leaves, and they watch what Trump does when he wins. He's not somebody who gracefully wins. I mean, when he wins, after you've attacked him, he grinds you into dirt, and you know, to send a message. And Rosenstein's sitting there. You know, I think he's, to say been, I mean figuratively now, not violently
when you
whacked.
say he's on the rolls, this isn't the type of roll that you had in mind.
I did like that picture. That was well done. I could not imagine eating such a hot dog, but and I love hot dogs.
It was more about just cooking his goose. I guess I could have him there with a goose as well. But so we've got a lot to cover today.
Sure.
Oh, but I shouldn't talk about that, right?
Why don't we just proceed through through the presentation and jump into the first page as per usual. This is, I think, our 110th show. Average length about 2 hours, maybe longer than that. And we've both been very busy in the last 24 hours doing lots of things we'll talk about. But we've got a major reveal that's going to go out momentarily here, that BKD is not the worst accounting firm in the universe. There's an even bigger one that's even worse that's involved with this. It's incredible.
It is.
So this idea of Hillary, I call it, and the bandits, plural, is that basically the Clinton family, like other fraud families, has been exploiting a situation which some would argue may have been set up by design. That is to say that the regulatory regime for charities, particularly ones like the Clinton Foundation that in theory operate all over the world, that regime, I would argue, has been gamed to make it impossible to truly track down in sufficient time the exploits of something like this that would be so bold as to say, you know what, the rule book doesn't apply to me. You know, I get to do what I want. I mean, I serve the public. I got this foundation over here in Little Rock. I told the IRS, my people, my Justice Department people, that I was going to be a presidential archive just based in Little Rock. But that's too boring. You know, why would I go back to Little Rock? I don't want to do that. I mean, I want to set this baby up in New York, where there are lots of people who are going to grease my palm and my wife's palm, my daughter's palm.
Better strip clubs.
Exactly. To you know, to seed us in advance so that when Hillary becomes president, she's totally bought and paid for. I mean, that's the obvious vehicle here.
Yeah.
And when you look at the facts, when you don't fall for the trap that the Clintons are likely to set us, say, you know, this is a technical argument. It's all about minutia. These things are never prosecuted.
Right.
It's yesterday's business. I've been in the public domain forever. You know, my wife ran for re-election as a senator and she won, so all the past is ancient history, it shouldn't apply to me. All these ridiculous arguments.
Yeah.
You know, when on the other hand, you've got Corinne Brown over here, who we say, oh, we're going to give Hillary a complete pass on her mishandling of classified information, and then a few days later, we're going to indict Corinne Brown, then we're going to swiftly convict her and send her right into prison. You know, and then for good measure, we'll arrange all these hurricanes to go after the prison. I'm just teasing on that one. But, you know, over her role in an $800,000 fraud, whereas these Clintons, I mean, Bill made close to $800,000 on at least one speech, one 20 or 30 or 40-minute speech. Hillary made, you know, multiples of $800,000 and many, many speeches, which had to be, you know, less interesting than reading the instruction list for Tide detergent. I mean, it was just... it's ridiculous what these people have done, monetizing the likelihood that the Clintons will be back in power in the White House so that all these grifters around the world say, okay, I got a foundation too. I'll just route them 200,000, 500,000, 2 million, 5 million, whatever. And then when she becomes president, should that ever happen, which will never happen, now anyway, I get back my money many times over. So they've been doing this since October 23rd, 1997 and getting away with it. And is it completely stupid for them to say, well, I got away with it for 21, 22 years. Let's keep doing this stuff.
I think it just even becomes almost like I use the example, in the town that I grew up in, there's a corner that recently added a camera on the red light, and people are telling me they're getting tickets there all the time. So the law hasn't changed. It's still illegal to make a right on red, but now it's not like those people want to break the law. It's just so accustomed to doing that they're like, what do you mean I got a ticket? Like, what do you mean we can't steal all this money?
That's right. Well, and when you look at the headline here, when you contrast, let's say, Enron or a for-profit corporation with a foundation, it's very interesting. We can say that we were, I think, meeting now with the person we met with yesterday, and
it's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's happened now, finally, after a number of years, is that mainstream media is very interested in this. And so we were over at the Wall Street Journal, and I made the point to a wonderful reporter there who's involved in the video named Shelby Holiday, yeah. Great name, actually, for a reporter, and just in general. But I made the point, well, a well-run business, like a really well-run business, will keep track of all its revenue. It's not like, you have some business with shareholders and say, Jason, this month, why don't you take the revenue? I mean, all the revenue has to go into the cash box or whatever, the accounts. And if you can end up making a quarter for every dollar of revenue, you're a hero in a for-profit business, right? But in the not-for-profit world, what these Clintons and their demon rats and some of the establishment Republicans figured out is that if you have crooked trustees and accounting firms that are purposely gamed,
can't count.
No accounting firm. If you've got such a firm, it's a collection of firms, and you've got causes that sound interesting, and you've got dirty money around the world that needs to be, go through a laundromat, and you got dirty people around the world who like to get on the right side of a president, then what better way than to send money towards the Clintons that doesn't necessarily end up in the Clinton Foundation? And we start thinking about that. The basic math is they've declared $3 billion of revenue to build a campus that they said to the city of Little Rock would cost $100 million. And nobody said, well, why does the Clinton Foundation need $3 billion to put up a campus in Little Rock that only costs $100 million? And what's going to happen to the other $2.9 billion?
All in $1 bill.
Exactly. And so the first question with a crooked charity like the Clinton Foundation and its affiliates is how much other money may have gone towards the Clinton Foundation. You just take it off the top. It's like an agent's 15% or more. Maybe, who knows? Maybe $100 billion was sent towards this collection of affiliates, and only $3 billion gets declared as going in. So now you're declaring 3% of your total inflows. I mean, that sounds a lot better to me than actually having to compete, and to deal with the SEC and tax authorities, whatever. And then if you're like the Tiger Woods or Roger Federer, or Albert Einstein of a business, then you get a quarterback for every dollar. And this one, you get 97 cents scattered to the wind. No one's going to find it. And you put 3% in the foundation, and then you start paying off your mistresses and your friends and your political allies. You could even steal out of the $3 billion. And if you're a fraudster, it's like, compete against General Motors or operate a charity. And the even better thing of it is, you get to go around the world with a fancy target saying, I'm a philanthropist. I'm not for profit, I'm a philanthropist. And so this circus has been going on for far too long. And I think it's like anything else. I think it was Donald Trump who might have said that, if you borrow, somebody said if you borrow $4 million from the bank owns you. If you borrow $4 billion from a bank, you own the bank, because the problem is so big back then in the 80s that the bank is not going to want you to default. Similarly, this fraud has gotten so big and has involved so many people, so many politicians in office, previously in office, so many world leaders, so many consultants and accountants and lawyers and whatever, that the theory is, well, maybe we'll just let it slide, you know? We can't police this. You know, it would bring the system down. And I don't think that's the way you and I and many other people believe. There should be one set of rules.
Yeah.
They should be applied fairly across the line, and you can't let this example stand.
I agree.
People always ask me, so what's new? What's the catalyst? The catalyst is by 15 November 2018, which is, 30 plus days from now, this mess of Clinton Foundation charities has to find an accounting firm that will, given the 110 videos that we've done so far, and we may start doing more than 2 a week between now and then, just to kind of really make it difficult for these people, is they're going to have to find somebody who will actually ignore all of our work and take without question BKD's deeply flawed and defective work product from 97 to 2012. We're going to talk about this new firm, Praxity, which, as you were saying, what does that sound like to you?
It sounds like the name for a drug that would be advertised on CNN.
Exactly. Or one of those infomercials when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like, buy this Praxity.
Yeah.
It's
like,
but anyway, who's going to accept this work, which is what you're going to have to do to produce an audit, relying, if it's Cohn-Resnick, who's already screwed up twice in that they...
Aren't they lawyers, though?
No, they're an accounting firm.
Oh.
Cohn-Resnick is a firm that screwed up in 2015 when they, in theory, studied carefully the historical returns and missed everything about them and said everything was fine. And then they screwed up when Price Waterhouse said, we're not doing this stuff anymore, we're out of here. They said, oh, we'll do it. So they did the 2016 return. So what accounting firm in its right mind, knowing 110 videos accounting, governments around the world looking at this, publicly admitted that the IRS is looking at this, the FBI is looking at this, they've been looking at it for a couple of years. What accounting firm is going to go and say, you know what, yeah, for $3 million I'll do it. You could burn a lot of money. $3 million would be a lot to charge this foundation, but you can burn a tremendous amount of money defending against your role, your specific role, blessing this fraud, and then the reputational risk to an accounting firm coming in now.
How about the legal liability?
Well, also the reputational risk. It's like, you don't want to be notorious BKD, I don't think. You don't want to be notorious Praxity. Right. It's really up to these firms. There've got to be some grown-ups, who can look at this and say, wait a minute, BKD is in fact BAD. Anybody in BKD who's had anything to do with any aspect of my firm, I don't want to hear from them. And the people at Praxity, which we'll talk about, it's a gigantic firm. They need to insulate themselves from BKD. They need to pull these people from BKD offline, and they need to set a very important example because these are big firms today.
Well, Charles, I now know why Eric Hansen was unable to answer my call, because it seems that he was 2 hours ago just tweeting about winning some kind of award. Congratulations to BKD.
You're kidding me.
Trusted advisor for graduating from the Leadership Academy. I guess he's congratulating the trusted advisor. I went to hear because I wanted to ask Truman the Tiger what he thinks of BKD's audits, and he'll say they're great.
Yeah, Truman is the one who obviously did the Clinton Foundation audit. You probably put that stuffed animal next to the audit and said, what do you think, stuffed animal? Does this make sense to you? Right.
Or maybe he had the head on while he was, you can't really see through those mascot heads that easily, so perhaps that interfered with the proper math in doing the accounting there.
Yeah, so this is a hard deadline, the 15th of November 2018. If BKD and Praxity are going to, if they decide to allow their work product to stand going through November 15th, 2018, the magnitude of their legal exposure is going to be ginormous.
Wow.
Right? And that's the tough choice they face. It's a profiles encourage moment. Are you going to take it in the shorts now, for what you did in the past, or are you going to allow, make no comment and allow some other schmuck to take the job of putting their name, relying on your work, And then when the Jericho walls come crumbling down in the new firm, that new firm is going to sue the hell out of BKD.
They're
and
going
Proxy.
to do that.
I don't know.
They're not going to admit they did something.
I don't know. It's that's not the way, in my experience of business. When you get to a place, if you're an experienced person, and you discover that there's a big error in work that has been done by your firm, you immediately ask independent people in the firm who are not conflicted to put dimensions around the problem today.
Dementia?
Dimensions around the problem today. Say, how much is this? $100 million problem? Is it $50 million? Is it $1 billion problem today? And how much could it be next week?
But how do they not know that all this was going on?
Well, because as we'll get into it, I think the top people at BKD and Praxity, did know, and didn't do their homework. We're going to get into specifics.
So, but just so I understand, you're saying it's a matter of BKD saying, now wait a minute, it was this guy who decided to do it, and then
right, and just say, whoever it is, you thought you were going to come to work tomorrow? Not so much. You thought you had a partnership interest in BKD? Not so much. And they're going to have to find people to blame here.
They're going to have to find a lot of orange pajamas.
Exactly. So this is a big drama, and we'll get into some breaking developments in just a few minutes. But before we do that, on the next page.
Where's the mouse? Here we go.
For the new viewers, and you're marching along now, Jason. You got
68,300, I think.
That's very good. That's very good. Moving along.
Growing nicely.
Some of the new people may not understand that this approach is a different approach. We're not trying to be CNN or the New York Times, God forbid. What we're trying to do is we're trying to use the internet and the tools that are available in social media and our analytical experience to provide to the audience, our growing audience, very quick and insightful and supported analysis of breaking events. We've chosen this topic in advance, and Jason, thanks for indulging me, and viewers, thanks for indulging me and letting me do 110 videos on this subject. But in every case, what we do is we rest our analysis on factual information. We provide links to it. We encourage our viewers, to read our information, go to the links, examine for yourselves. Is it reasonable to reach the conclusions we've reached? And to the extent you have ideas of what we could look at and think about differently, please do use my site to contact me, or contact me on Twitter, or contact Jason. And we do listen carefully to constructive comments. Most of the comments so far that have come in are quite constructive. We ignore, we won't characterize them, but other sorts of comments. And we really do encourage you to reach out to us and to participate. This is a team exercise. A lot of you have been enormously helpful taking the work that we've done together and then sharing it around with investigators, sharing it around with legislators, sharing it around with law firms and accounting firms and others, so that today, sitting here on the 10th of October 2018, after more than a year of this, many, many eyes are watching this. And our real target audience on this particular show, different than your others, is not the general reader, not somebody who is expecting to see a cartoon or me hit Jason with a pie or vice versa with whipped cream.
We did do a cartoon, but we haven't done the pie yet.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing that. At least that might be our last video if you hit me with a pie.
I thought it was you hitting me with a pie.
I would do that too.
It's very reminiscent of the Three Stooges.
I love the Three Stooges.
I knew you were going to say that somehow. The Three Stooges did a 3D movie at one point.
Who are these people you call the Stooges?
Little Seinfeldian of you there.
Right.
Charles, before we get into the playlist and everything, I wanted to remind everybody that in addition to YouTube and Facebook and VK.com and DLive and Patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. Crowdsource the Truth is also on Periscope, and just yesterday, Crowdsource the Truth has become a VIP Periscope producer. So we have this fancy animated.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what that does, but it looks good.
How many views have you had? Does it say 2 million?
That's hearts. So while the thing is going, if people like it, they can click on hearts. it's good for people to know about this Periscope channel because we only have 4,698 followers on Periscope, and I know that people have their preferences. We've got the comments here for Periscope, and now we're creating sort of the video equivalent of Cream of Wheat, where the guy's holding the box with the picture of the guy holding the box with the picture of the guy. So I like that. But wanted to let everybody know that we're also there on Periscope. So in the event that something happens to YouTube, Periscope is an option. Patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth is an option.
And I actually noticed, checking the viewership on the one we did Sunday, I noticed that Crowdsource the Truth 2 has 2,300 views, and the main channel has 15,000 in a couple, 3 days. And in checking around, we've been doing more and more of this. We're very interested in trying to understand how those metrics compare. There are very few shows of this length and this kind of detail on the internet, so maybe it's tough to get good comparables together for it. But hats off to you, Jason, for conceiving of Crowdsource the Truth and executing on it and organizing the vast amount of information that you do, not just with me, but with everybody else.
Thank you,
incredible.
Charles. Yeah, Crowdsource the Truth 2 is another good alternative. And again, I think it's important that we have these alternative ways of getting the information out to everybody. One thing that I've done with Crowdsource the Truth 2, just experimenting with YouTube monetization, there are ads on Crowdsource the Truth 2, and people can utilize Super Chat if they'd like to. It's interesting to note how communicative Google is when it comes to doing things to block you from getting the money that people send through Super Chat. It's they're not straight blocking it or stealing it or taking it. It's just email after email after email about W-2s and proper tax forms. I mean, that's legitimate. That's legitimate. But it's interesting how it seems to come up out of nowhere. I mean, sent them a W-2 that I think was good, and they just couldn't. Something was wrong with the PDF.
Well, they're processing it. They're looking at it.
Something was wrong with the PDF file.
Yeah, they'll put their best man on it.
Exactly, top men.
So should we put up the playlist, or have you already done that?
Oh yes, the playlist. My apologies. The playlist is growing, of course. That's another great resource for viewers who want to stay on top of all of the information. And you're right. This is our 110th show. The playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel under Sunday with Charles has got all of the Sunday with Charles episodes and also all of the Charles Ortel is Closing In episodes. So people can go back through, and if they've got a particular interest in having a deep understanding of the financial crimes of the Clintons, or something on the order of 200 to 300 hours on their hands, it's a good place to go.
That's right. If you're heading up to the International Space Station and planning to spend some time. But seriously, on that list, though, what we've been trying to do, when you get into subjects like this, when I expose GE, always what people would say to you is, all right, what's your elevator pitch? And you'd say, I hate that. And then you'd say, well, GE's a fraud.
Yeah,
and then, what are the details? You asked me for an elevator pitch. And then similarly, on the Clinton Foundation, same idea. So anticipating that this would happen, we decided last year to go through a process of taking, for people who are the investigators, who otherwise might have to go out and try to do all this from a standing start, we're saving you. Though there's 200-300 hours up there, we are saving you tens of thousands of hours in the way we do this. And not all of the audience is going to have the kind of patience and interest. But what will happen here, I think, now as the mainstream media gets more engaged, people are going to be going back into this playlist and say, my God, how did we not see this? Everybody knew this. We'll get those kind of responses. But I think the archive of videos will get more and more views in a sort of a geometric process.
Well, and people like the New York Times and the Daily Beast will have a connect the dots roadmap of what to report the opposite of.
That's right. So we've been so busy, and it's actually great that we've been so busy, and thanks to the various people who are now reaching out and contacting us. But my takeaway, if we go back to the moment, I don't know how much you were watching this, Jason, back in 2016, in the several weeks, like October 2016 forward to the election date, Hillary, there was a moment where I thought, well, maybe we better get nervous here. They were acting really cocky about, measuring the drapes and all that kind of stuff for the White House. And
just know how big a van they need to put everything in.
Right, exactly. Yeah, how many semi? We got to call up that Haddads. Haddads. Okay, call those guys up because their trailers are gigantic.
Yep.
We'll bring a few of them mega trailers in.
The couches.
Yeah, we'll get all those Gilbert Stewart paintings up to Chappaqua and whatever. But no, there was a moment where she looked pretty, certain she was going to win, even though she wasn't bothering to campaign. And then it moved along, and there was a period where she was so sure she was going to win that she was saying, making these sort of trash-talking speeches where she was saying, Donald Trump has got to accept the results of the election. I mean, he's got to accept the results of the election. This isn't a banana republic.
Right.
Not that she was projecting. But, and here we see in her recent behavior, I don't see Bill making these comments yet supporting her, but in these comments that she made in the last 24 hours, if you hit that one here, you can't be civil with a party that wants to destroy you. Now, who are you talking about, Hillary? Are you talking about the Democrats trying to destroy the Republicans, or are you talking about, to make a comment like that is just so outrageous. We are not in this country, at this moment, the economy, we've got some problems in the stock market today, we're going to talk about that, but we're not in this country, Somalia.
Well, this is a major break from like normalcy and sanity. We've got one of the most well-known political figures in the world calling for lack of civility.
Right. And an important thing is this is a failed presidential candidate twice, I might add, who is making these comments from UK, I think from Oxford. It used to be
where her husband was raping.
I don't know that he's currently doing that. But
he was.
He might have in the past. But the point here is that we used to have this way of doing things where politics ends at the water's edge. That was the theory that former Democratic former presidential candidates don't go around the world trashing the sitting president of the United States.
That's her new move,
and it's not it's not helping America or her. And it's also just the way I look at this is I say to myself, I am so happy that she is not president of the United States. Not least of which because maybe I wouldn't have been alive if she was president of the United States. But she, you look at this type of lack of judgment, these silly remarks that don't reflect well on her, on Democrats, don't help the Democratic Party at this moment of time going through to the election here, midterm election, and she can't see how stupid these remarks are. It's just, how boneheaded a person is this person? Well, it's amazing to me.
Yeah, they've taken her out of her Captain Pike head in the electronic wheelchair outfits.
I guess. But really, just to speak clinically about it, and I'll remind people, I did not vote in the 2016 election, and I did not vote also in the 2008 election. I reluctantly voted for Romney in 2012.
Ooh.
I did. It's just something, I must have had ptomaine poisoning or something.
Something you ate?
What?
Something you ate?
Definitely something I ate. But if we go into the text here for a second, in addition, we jokingly say fraudsters got a fraud. What moron would spend, whatever these tickets are going to cost, to go listen to Bill and Hillary? I would remind people that Hillary with James Patterson, who is actually, a gifted writer, he had to cancel that book tour.
With Bill?
Well, yeah, because it was going so poorly. Every time they would, in the middle of it, every time they would say something, he'd be shouted down for this or that protester. Wow. And so here you're starting with fittingly, a speaking tour where you're going to charge people to listen to these blowhards, starting November 18th in Las Vegas.
Wow.
And it's just the classlessness, the gracelessness of people thinking that they should sell tickets for a max of $750 to hear these people, these transparent grifters.
I thought you were going to say something else.
I'm trying to be nice.
No,
transparent grifters.
Okay, sorry.
Why do they need more money at this point? It's ridiculous. And having said that, it's a gift from heaven for us But if they do it, on this one we can't lose, right? I mean, you know that there are going to be protesters. You know that Laura Loomer is
I was
going to
going
be.
to say, Laura's got to be
the Illuminator.
polishing up her credit card already.
She's going to be there. You know,
no doubt.
who knows? You know how she's going to appear, and others will appear, and the commentary is not going to be positive, and the late night people even are going to have some fun with it. So, you know, it's I suppose good for that. But then we get to this comment in Zero Hedge. I mean, I have always been told by the liberal friends I have that, you know, it's wrong of me to say that Hillary Clinton is stupid, and, you know, how could you allow yourself in this climate of the Me Too movement, having lost twice, to make a comment that this stupid, that Bill Clinton's sexual assault allegations, if you go back to the top, are different? Yeah, they are different. They're different.
Actual rape.
Yeah, they're very different because, you know, she said they've been investigated. They were never investigated properly. Ask Christine Amanpour should go sit down with Juanita Broaddrick.
Yeah.
These were not investigated. And the thing that's really amazing to me about it is that she's winning the Camille Cosby Award here. You know,
What?
Hillary.
Is that you just invented?
Yeah, I mean,
Camille Cosby
to stand by her man, you know, maybe you would think about doing it the first time, but, you know, for all of these different allegations over all these different years, now in a moment, remember what Bill was quoted as saying, you know, well, you can't do things today that you were able to do before. You remember he said something like that?
The standards for what you can do to a woman against her will are different.
Right,
today
exactly.
than they
I mean,
were.
yeah, that's
It's
also a
like,
very...
Dude, stop talking.
Yeah, you don't have a daughter and a granddaughter by chance, do you?
That was
Yeah, you
outrageous.
do. Yeah, so I mean, these kind of comments coming from Team Clinton, you know, make me wonder just how far off whatever game she might have had she is. I mean, because this is really another thing that makes it very different is, especially when we talk to our friend Kathleen Willey and Juanita Broaddrick and Paula Jones and people like that, you know, the person who directed in 1998, who was leading the charge against the people who had been accusing Bill of rape and other problems, the person who decided to turn that into an election midterm issue in 1998, 20 years ago, was none other than Hillary Clinton. You know, and it's one thing to you know, maybe forgive your husband for questionable allegations. It's another thing to know in her heart of hearts, because she has to know this. I mean, no one in theory knows Bill Clinton better than Hillary Clinton. And she has to know that where there's smoke in this case, there's a raging inferno.
Well, she's pro-rape. She laughed about how, I mean, I get it that as a public defender, you have to sometimes defend people that you know are guilty and you can't just not do it. But she's recorded on a tape laughing about the fact that a 40-something-year-old guy got acquitted for raping a 12-year-old girl who remains alive. What's her name?
Kathy Shelton, whom I met. Yeah, and so, I mean, it's just really, to me, it's disgusting, frankly. And you know, it's very much, I believe, and as I've been arguing to some of the Democratic people I know, it is time for the money in the Democratic Party to pay a visit to whoever might listen in the Clinton camp and say, listen, you know, shut the F up, you know, go to Chappaqua, go to Washington, D.C., stay home, learn how to cook something, and you know, go through an entire liquor store worth of Chardonnay, but don't waste your time talking, because nobody's interested in what you have to say, and you're not helping the Democratic Party.
Yeah, why does she think she's still relevant? That makes very little sense to me.
L'état, c'est moi. The state is me. Anyway, this is, if we hit that one, that's the latest story in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, let's talk about this. This is super interesting.
Yeah, this is, this says new email and interviews indicate that Republican operative who sought to obtain Hillary Clinton's emails had established a relationship with Mr. Flynn.
Who were those new email and interviews with?
I don't know, and the problem here is that
it was you, wasn't it?
I don't think it might have been, some of the interviews might have been with me, but or us rather, but I think a problem with the Wall Street Journal is they're pricing their service way too high at $20 a month for news that's kind of not really breaking all that much typically. That's high.
I was about to subscribe, but you're right, it's $19.95 a month.
Yeah, it's a sawbuck.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. So,
Because I guess they're used to catering to an investment-oriented reader who doesn't care about $20.
but I suppose it's probably like 3 mocha loca choca venti lattes at Starbucks or whatever. So it's
But
maybe,
it's got ads too, doesn't it?
does.
Yeah, I object to that.
But if we go just up a little bit into the name, so there's Shelby, whom we met. Byron Tao, I think, has been there longer. I don't know this Dustin Volts, but they're really after, they haven't done the Wall Street Journal, to be fair to them. They've done several articles on the Clinton Foundation over time, quite a few actually. It's just that they haven't gotten deeply stuck in to the essence of the fraud. And now, Peter Smith, in my experience with him, I don't know that it's scientific, but I probably spent, if 100% is the amount of time I spent talking to him and emailing with him, 98.5% was talking about the Clinton Foundation and how to expose it and how to motivate contacts of his, people he might have known, to either cover it from a journalistic standpoint or to investigate it or to get politicians and others to actually jump in on it. So my experience with Peter is really all about that. I'm not interested in partisan political politics. I mean, I can comment on it. We're all entitled to do that. But I'm still very single-mindedly interested in making sure that the perpetrators of the largest unprosecuted charity fraud in history are investigated, prosecuted, convicted, incarcerated with no mercy whatsoever.
Elevator pitch, hashtag lock her up.
Exactly, lock them all up.
But here's the thing that's important about the Wall Street Journal, because they've been pivotally involved in this Peter Smith story because of this guy, Shane Harris.
We're going into that in later. We'll just say that. If that's okay.
We'll say
we have a whole long slide on that.
I don't trust this guy, Charles.
I know, but we're going to go into that in great depth.
Okay, very good.
So this just came out. Frankly, neither Jason or I have had a chance to read it in depth. And note to Shelby, could you send it to us in a outside a link so we can actually read it? That would be great.
Don't mean to be cheapskates, but
well, why not?
Not subscribing to the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
Sorry, Shelby.
So here we have fake NBC News trying to make a big to-do about Donald Trump's tax returns. You'll see this story now. They're trying to float the trial balloon that Donald Trump's tax returns are going to be a big problem for him, especially if the Democrats win. Now that's who is that person? Oh, that's his father.
He was a weird-looking guy.
Too much sun in that picture.
This is son.
I mean, son. He obviously had melanoma or something. But
they do look similar. Eyes, nose,
eyebrows,
yeah.
But they could be his greatest vulnerability. But let's contrast that. However much money the dude declared, let's say $5 billion or whatever the number is. Clinton Foundation, we know, is $100 billion. Trump's tax returns, not in the public domain. Clinton's already in the public domain.
Clinton Foundations.
And Clinton's.
Why?
Because they put their personal tax returns.
Why?
They were running for office, they decided to do it. So you could see already, we don't need it's one thing that sadly has become true. You don't need the freaking FBI to do this. You've got, the Clintons have put their tax returns out there. They have declared income from Clinton Foundation donors. That is illegal. If you could, if you're very involved in it, it's enormous. You're not allowed to derive a private gain from substantial donors to the Clinton Foundation. They have their own foundation whose tax returns are in the public. Here's NBC nattering on about something that could be a problem instead of focusing on something that actually is a problem. In the case of the Clinton, the Trumps, as a guess, without having spent a second actually trying to look through any of Donald Trump's tax returns, I sincerely doubt that Donald Trump's signature is on the tax return. Typically, when you're involved in these very complex tax returns, you have multiple advisors and law firms or whatever who sign the return, and on your behalf, because these returns are enormously complicated. I mean, his return's probably thousands of pages long, counting all the companies in which he's invested and stuff like that. So there's a hypothetical NBC is hyperventilating about, and then there's an actual that NBC said, you know what, like the FBI, we're not going to focus on that obvious fraud because, that doesn't suit our narrative.
Wow. Well, look at this related thing, Charles. You see what it says there?
Where?
Trump family's massive tax con job has been hiding in plain sight for years, and it could cost them millions.
Well, who wrote that?
I don't know. Someone who's talking about cashing in.
So, I mean, you better be pretty sure of your ground when you write something like that. Susan Garment.
Accusing him of a con job.
Yeah, Susan Garment, I hope you know your accounting, and I hope you've got legal advice, because the Trumps are pretty litigious, and to accuse this of being a con job, again, the difference between for-profit, that's not Cuomo, that's D'Amato.
Oh, right.
The difference between for-profit tax returns and charity fraud is that in a for-profit tax fraud situation, you've got to prove intent, okay? For charity fraud, you do not have to prove intent. It's a very high bar to prove intent. And so, I mean, for a number of reasons, this is an idiotic article without even having read more than 2 seconds of it. And it's only going to buy CNN, I guess, or NBC News, going to buy them some trouble here, I think.
She's a garment.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I don't know. I'm curious to know if there is, in fact, anything legally wrong with President Trump's taxes.
Right. And then we have the gift that keeps on giving. All right, we held another NBC. I mean, the editors at NBC must be like not working today or something like that. But I have this article.
Joe Biden.
The Democrats are going to win 40 House seats and take back the Senate. So with Joe, we got to ask him, the first question is, what country are you talking about? Is this the United States of America now in 2018? He's saying this internationally from Chatham House, which is in the UK, I think. And is marijuana legal in the UK? Because you're smoking some serious hemp here, Joe. I mean, the math is just not there for you. I doubt the Democrats are going to get 40 seats in the House, and they're certainly not going to take back the Senate if we spend any reasonable time on the number of vulnerable Democrats in states that Trump won by large margins. We look at the recent polls that are weighted properly for likely voters, including independents.
What the hell is he talking about? Why does anybody care what Joe Biden says?
I don't know. I mean, I do feel sorry for his losses. I mean, he lost
Well,
several
sons
family
and-
members. Well, and also earlier in his career, his wife.
His wife died in a car accident or something?
Yeah, and I think a child maybe as well. I mean,
And
he,
then
you know,
his
so
other
he's been.
wife, he told her to buy a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Joe is he's frankly an amiable dunce. I mean, he's just. But to say these kind of
I
things.
think a lot of people think he's touched a lot of young girls on camera inappropriately.
Right. And ask people in wheelchairs to stand up so they can take credit. You know, seriously, stand up.
He is just a dummy. The best thing Joe Biden ever did actually has so little to do with him. It's a musical interlude that somebody made, the Joe Biden Buy a Shotgun song.
Oh, is that right?
Fantastic.
We got to put that up.
Yeah, it's somebody.
And then we have this Chi-Fi spy.
Sci-fi spy. I like it. It's getting better each week.
Yeah, Chi-Fi spy. And she's saying, you know, it's a technique of division to call to lock her up. And what's really interesting, I know, Jason, if you've had a chance to watch these rallies, there'll be one tonight at 7:30.
I've been to some of them.
The Trump rallies?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Well, Trump VR was shot at a rally, and then when he was going to pardon Sheriff Arpaio, I went to
really? Okay.
Arizona.
Well, so he's really getting more comfortable, and the crowds are getting larger and larger. And what's really fun to watch are the faces in the crowd, how they react to what he's saying. And when he just mentions Feinstein, right away, lock her up! Lock her up.
You know, Scott Bennett was on earlier today, and he named Senator Feinstein as one of the representatives who he presented his shell game report to, which was all about terrorist financing, and she did nothing with it.
Well, so with Feinstein, I mean, the thing that's really so disappointing, just because you're a woman doesn't mean necessarily that you should stand for women's rights, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, no more than if you're a man, you should stand for man's rights. I mean, you should care, right? I mean, but when you go and you say, well, look, I'm, you know, I don't know if she's the senior senator or not from California. Who's the other one?
Yeah. I don't know. Berceras Congress.
But I think she is the senior senator. I could be wrong, but
She's a senior citizen.
right? But for her to do what she did to Dr. Ford
Terrible.
is really bad. And then to go with a straight face and say you're a woman's advocate, again, really bad stuff. And I would argue she deserves to lose, and even though that's going to hurt us more than if she won. I mean, the person, De Leon, who is he's out there with Cortez, and he's way in loony left land. He deserves to beat her.
De Leon is the name of the sandwich shop next to NYU.
Is that right?
Deli on.
Yeah, actually, I keep meaning to bring this up to you. I'm walking up 7th Avenue and I see a sign for a deli, and it's spelled Khalian, deli. And I'm wondering if that's somebody who was trying to spell out Korean,
And got it wrong.
Kalian.
Oh my goodness.
Just got it completely wrong.
That's way off.
But so anyway, she's really not doing the Democratic Party any services here.
I think it's just incredibly, I'm going to say that Dianne Feinstein is a horrible person to say the chance to lock up someone who is clearly doing crimes, hiring spies, ignoring reports from Army intelligence officers about terrorist financing, and sowing division and violence throughout the country by ginning up what at this point I am coming right out and calling a fake story.
Right.
To throw off a process in the Senate that's intended to confirm one of the most important jobs in the government, and then she says this is a technique of division?
Exactly. I mean, if we think about that hearing, it was obviously a very painful thing for many to watch, but what was the reality of that? Senators were supposed to give their advice and consent, right, to a selection by the man who won the Electoral College and is the President of the United States of a Supreme Court justice, and the history and tradition of that through the Obama presidency, through other past presidencies, is that the sole question is this person qualified to hold the seat? That's the sole question. And he's obviously immensely well qualified to hold the position. And instead of doing that, these people are, actually, in theory, supposed to be able to understand whether these Supreme Court candidates are up to the level of, behaved like, bratty nursery school children.
Worse than that, they don't even know what the Constitution says and doesn't say. They think that everybody has the right to be believed. And they totally forgot about the part where you have the right to be presumed innocent before everybody thinks you're guilty and a rapist.
And they, hogging airtime to get TV time, the Spartacus moment, and all that stuff.
Cory Booker. Ooh.
Wow, he's going to be lucky if he gets reelected. He may not be reelected. Really deplorable, as they say.
Terrible, terrible. There was some actor who I heard about recently that somehow through social media everybody discovered that he was bagging groceries at Trader Joe's. That could be a good job for Cory Booker.
Yeah, or working down at that bar with John Edwards in South Carolina if it's still there.
Terrible.
I used to be almost.
You could serve beers to Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, you got Brett beer. And how in the hell does this Eric Holder guy?
Terrible.
I mean, if you can pull up the Hill story for a second.
Now when I look at Eric Holder, all I can think about are the stories that Michael Moore has told me that are imminently going to be known by everyone on October 29th when How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas comes out. But he is a bad guy.
Bad hombre. And, to say that when Republicans go low, we kick them. And Barack Obama said, was it Sean Connery? You don't bring
a knife to a gunfight.
A knife to a gunfight. I mean, and Obama actually said that in campaigning in 2008. And Holder said, my job as Attorney General is to correct Barack Obama's back.
To do what?
Is to cover Barack Obama's back. He actually said something.
It's supposed to be.
I know.
It's supposed to be to serve justice.
Right. And here's a guy who gets cited for contempt of Congress, making these kind of comments, testing the waters to see if he's got presidential timber.
Terrible.
And it has nothing to do with his ethnicity. It has everything to do with his lack of intellect.
Yes. Well, ethics, I would say.
And ethics.
I can't speak to his intellect. I'm not, familiar enough with any of his failures or successes in that regard, but just reading his tweets and his public comments, the guy's an idiot and he's part of this crew calling for violence.
Yeah. So if we go back in the course of today, we've been warning on prior shows of both Sunday with Charles and connecting the dots here. We've been warning that as interest rates rise on the 10-year government debt, which is the benchmark piece of paper that investors look at, the 10-year yield, you don't pay state and local income tax on it, you just pay federal income tax on it, and it's up there at 325 or so, where under Obama at the low point it was like one and change. And so as it starts rising above dividend yields for actively traded stocks, people say, well, wait a minute, this is not going to be generally good for the market, and they start taking bait off the table, and that's what happened today. This morning it was not, the Dow's futures were not indicated down as much as they ended up closing today. So we've had a decidedly negative turn in sentiment. Who knows what'll happen tomorrow? And October is typically the month that crashes. So people are,
Why is that?
I don't know. It just happens. Been a lot of crashes in October.
Huh.
29.
No way that's a manipulation.
Not at all. But you look at this, well down from 26. He's blaming this a bit on Jay Powell, apparently the president. Jay's a good guy, and I think Jay's doing the correct thing, raising interest rates.
Who is Jay Powell? Oh, the head of the Fed?
Yeah,
Why
good guy.
is he blaming this on Jay Powell?
Well, you got to blame somebody, because the Fed has been increasing interest rates too aggressively. The President of the United States and the Fed chairman very frequently get into these type of debates before elections. But I actually think that the 10-year interest rate has been too low for too long, and I see a lot of strength in companies and in the economy, and I think it's absolutely right to get America back to a place where the investing class, the retirement class, the baby booming class, can get a more realistic and fair return on their investments so that they can live their retirement out in dignity. I didn't hit the link properly here, but
Make it work.
You can make it work? Okay. Whoops. There you go. Wow, that was pretty good. So basically the simple way to say this, it's 322.5, is that this 10-year yield is rising, and it would be a mistake to bet against the trend and think that it's not going to keep rising here for a little bit. And rising 10-year yield means pain for bond market investors. It means pain for many stock market investors. And what will happen is certain investors who are leveraged, who borrowed money to buy stocks or borrowed money to buy bonds, which is really silly, will discover that either the institutions where they have their accounts are going to force them out of the position, or they will decide to exit the field. And this period, this long bull market that we've enjoyed since March of 2009, 10 years, more than 10 years, could rapidly reverse and get a lot worse than this. So this is a moment to be cautious. We've been urging people to be cautious now for several months, hoping that people would eventually listen and get out early. But this is not a moment to be brave, and you see that here in this one, the final one on the page. There's something called the VIX index, which is, there are various VIX indexes now for different types of assets.
Is that eucalyptus vapor rub?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. But you look at without getting into the term structure of it, is that this VIX has risen a lot in the last several days.
What is this a measure of?
This is a measure of what the market thinks volatility is going to be in the future. So it may or may not be calculated correctly. People have issues with it, but when you look over a long period of time, which you can now do back to 2007, let's say, when you see these type of moves, like a rocket ship up, you need to be very cautious. And at the worst moments, I think, of the crisis in 2008, the VIX was up at like 80. It's currently, whatever, 18, 19, 20.
Way off with that 80 thing.
But it was, last week, it was like 12. So these are big moves, and if you're, I'm not encouraging people to speculate in anything, but when you're chasing a quick profit, there are ways to bet on what you think the index will be, and that's not something that people who are saving for retirement should do, but...
You are firmly in the territory of, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
All right, okay, so we'll get into what you do know about. So there have been some developments with BKD
Oh, yes.
that we're going to...
Beyond breakfast cereal.
Right, we're definitely going to call it now Notorious BKD. So if we hit that first link, a recent search of Arkansas records
Oh.
shows that they only got a license to issue reports and provide tax services in Arkansas on March 17th, 2003.
What the hell? I thought there's some huge Arkansas accounting firm. How did
Well, it used to be called Baird, Kurtz, and Dobson, and there is a question. They created the new firm beginning 2001 and by 2002. There is a question as to whether the preceding license of Baird, Kurtz, and Dobson would have given them the cover to issue reports in the name of BKD LLP. There's a question about that. I don't know the answer yet to it. But one thing, if we go back into the filing, the page rather, we can look at this. This is very interesting. We can hit this link. People who've been watching the show know that this is the California Registry of Trusts, and that's a major website. If you want to find information about charities that have filed in California, we go, and this is the Federal Employer Identification Number. And if, Jason, if you could punch in the number, which I'm sure you've remembered, is 31-158-0204. And we hit search here. And look what it says in registration status.
Delinquent.
Uh-huh.
They are
Delinquent. That's not good. That's not, you're
You
not
should
supposed
say degenerates.
to... So then we hit the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation.
How does that not automatically trigger some kind of...
It's California. The Moonbeam Governor Jerry Brown and Xavier Becerra, who decided to employ the Awan brothers, they're not going to do anything about it.
Clone the server or whatever the hell they do.
So we go down this page a little bit furthermore until we find the 2001-990. It gets a little bit further. Okay, slowly. 2000 down here. Where's 2000? Keep going. Or
it's not in order.
2000. This one here.
What is it? 2000?
You hit that one here. Okay, this was filed in 2001. And what the Clintons thought they could do is hide the fact that BKD's name is on this, and we will show you why I say that. If you go down several pages, it'll take it just next page after that, I think. Keep going. Keep going. No, Pat, back up. Sorry, Jason. Sorry, we skipped over it. There'll be a signature page. Keep going. Keep going.
Here, let me grab this thing because it's not going very smoothly.
Yeah, it's next. There you go. Okay, here we see a signature, August 21st, 2001, where they use the name BKD LLP.
Charles, it's not letting me control it as it normally does.
Huh. All right.
Whoa.
Okay, well here we see, I'll just talk to it while it's jumping around in the psychedelic show here. August 21st, 2001, right down here.
I can't zoom in on it.
It's okay. Well, there you go. Just okay. We got the experts will help us. This could be William E. McGee, maybe.
Is that somebody at BKD?
Could be. And so we need people in the crowd to check this out. Who is this guy? What's the history on this guy? Is that EIN? Notice his Social Security is blocked out. Is this actually BKD LLP's employer identification number? But August 21st, 2001, before they were licensed to use the name BKD LLP, they use it anyway to file a tax return. And you notice it says, under penalties of perjury, I declare, declaration of preparer, other than officer, is based on all information of which preparer has any knowledge. So this guy, either acting on his own lonesome or maybe on behalf of BKD, allows the name BKD LLP to be used in a filing for a tax return on August 21st, 2001. And the people I'm talking to say this just ain't right. And we're going to show you in a second that the version of the 2000 return that's on the Clinton Foundation web main portal has this obscured, this section purposely obscured so that you wouldn't notice this.
What has that on their website?
Yeah, we'll show you. We're going to go through a little bit of a riff here.
Wasn't William McGee married to Yee McGee?
No, that's another McGee.
Huh.
That's
Maybe that's
Gary McGee. Maybe it's the same McGee, actually.
Maybe it's Mr. Magoo.
No, but we'll get to the bottom of that. If we go back into the slide, so that's your first problem that we see.
Is Gary ever a nickname for William?
No. And then we see this. This is something that, thank you for doing this. This is this audit, in theory, it is so screwed up. Okay, this is in quotes an audit prepared. Look at BKD LLP is used, and you see here it's March 1st, 2002. So it's a year before.
Wow.
Here's BKD LLP. That doesn't look to me like an official signature, but maybe it is. And stop there for a second, please. This shows William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, Inc. There is no such entity. It's called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. There's no Inc. involved in it. And you look at this. This thing is dated March 1st, 2002.
Is this what he's talking about, Bill Clinton, Inc.?
No, this is the foundation in theory, but they're using an accounting firm that's not licensed to issue a statement that's not the correct name of the entity, filing a tax return that's not the correct name of the entity, that uses the wrong address that's not the correct registered address of the entity, and has multiple additional problems, including, for example, that all it has in theory is 15 million of cash and investments, but on the same day that this audit is issued, there's a lease entered into between the real name of the foundation, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, that obligates the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation to spend $100 million to build a complex in Little Rock to house a presidential archive and research center, but they don't have the money. So they made a binding commitment to come up with $100 million. They don't have the money. That's the kind of thing that you typically put in a footnote for your financial statements. You say, you know, this entity is technically insolvent because we don't have the money to perfect this binding agreement we made with the city of Little Rock. And why is that interesting? Because guess who audited the city of Little Rock? BKD. You know?
So what are they up to?
Not much good. Not much good. So if we go back into that slide, then what we see here, and the entity I said is wrong, and then the accounting policy that they use to issue this fake audit, they say we're using modified cash basis of accounting in caps, a basis of accounting other than generally accepted accounting principles. What does that technically mean? The wrong effing accounting principle. You're not allowed to use modified cash basis of accounting. And this is not an academic issue because by 2002, when this is March 1st, 2002, the Clinton Foundation is in New York, where New York state law says you've got to use accrual basis. And you've got to follow all pronouncements of the AICPA. It specifically says that in the law, the American Institute for Certified Public Accounts. By the way, the current chairman, the current COO, Mr. Hansen, obviously you're not listening to our broadcast because you're still working for these firms, is the organization, he's the chair of the organization that decides what these principles are. So here you've got some nitwit in BKD in Little Rock has managed to issue financial statements that say, by the way, these financial statements don't comply by the law. And then here it says down in the bottom, accordingly, the statements are not intended to present financial position or changes in net assets in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. So that means two things. These are not in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. And by the way, we don't intend for them to be in conformity. We're going to throw that in your face. You know, these aren't, and we didn't even intend for them to be correct. So take that. You know, we're going to do this for the next 4 years, by the way.
Well, at least it's a swing and a hit.
Right? And then we have April 4th, you hit this one. This Barbara Yates, we'll see in a second. Oh, sorry, to do this, we have to show people how to do this. We'll get to that in a second, once it comes up. Here what you have to do, Jason, is if you would type in Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. That's probably enough. F. Let's see what comes up.
Yeah. Did I
No,
spell
all right, we'll just
Hillary?
take out Bill. That's fine. Just take out the F. All right, then go and type in, you see the advanced search line over there? Yeah, hit that. Then we go to the EIN line and put 31-158-0204 and hit go. Okay, and then we go down to the bottom of the
There's
page.
no comma.
There is a comma in the legal name, but you go further down the page to the very bottom to the 2001 line.
Wow, they're doing really well.
Not so much.
116 million?
Yeah. If we can go right the way to the bottom to 2001 and hit that, please, and then go into like the 4th or 5th page. Again, this is not the correct name. This is not the right address. The numbers are all wrong.
Other than that, it's good.
Yeah, it's a good effort. You know, it's a real. And here we see, again, this is not obscured. Barbara Yates signs it on April 4th, 2002, on behalf of an entity that is not licensed to provide tax services in Arkansas if the information is correct that comes up on the Arkansas site. All right, so this is yet another example, again, of a false and materially misleading tax filing. That's a serious problem, right? And because all the way it works, as we've explained in past broadcasts, each subsequent return rests on the strength or weakness of the earlier returns. And if the earlier returns are wrong and false and materially misleading, then the later returns cannot be right. And you sort of have to have them be right. So if we go back into, we've shown you the places where you can see the signature. Now let's look at the Clinton Foundation main portal, which is here. Yeah, and let's punch 2000, if you'll see further down, Jason, not annual reports. Here, audited financial statements. If you hit the one for 2000, up will pop the Clinton version, okay? Then we go down the page.
It's a director's cut.
Yeah, director's cut. We go down the page and we're looking for that signature line.
See, for some reason, this one's loaded.
Here we go. Is the signature?
Wow, it's redacted.
It's redacted. And
how can they do that?
because somebody figured out that this was a problem and they didn't want people to see it.
Damn.
And I'm not an expert in this, but on later broadcasts, I didn't want to blindside you. There's a way of going in here to this document and seeing when it was changed. You hit properties, supposedly, of the document, and up will pop a bar, and then you can go and you can see when it was changed. And I believe this document was changed in 2007, which is when Hillary Clinton was running. We'll have to figure out how to do it.
Well, here, we can figure that out.
We'll figure it out at another moment. But basically, this change was made here to obscure the signature line after Hillary Clinton announced for president and while John Glasgow was still alive, and while there was still a controversy over how BKD was going to account for the cost of construction of the Little Rock campus. So we're going to get into that in a second. So
actually, well, here, sorry, we can very quickly just look at the thing. So it looks like it was created. No, see, it's just giving us today's date because it's when it was downloaded.
We'll talk. There's an expert who will walk. I mean, I'm not saying you're not an expert. There's somebody who's done this and will take us through it. But for later, it is possible to see that this was amended. We can also now look at the 2001 version. We go back to this Clinton Foundation org annual report page, this one, and then back at arrow it, and then we hit the 2001 link for good measure, and then let's see if that was altered. I think we know that it was. And we also could just actually stopping here. It was, remember, Paula signs it on the 4th of April, and she sends it by what, somebody on a bicycle from Little Rock to get to Ogden doesn't get to Ogden until April 29th.
Huh.
Why would that happen? But again, all the numbers are wrong. It's not done in accordance with GAAP, wrong accounting stuff. And again, blacked out, the signature line, intentionally blacked out.
Huh.
And the significance here for me is, we've talked in the past before about how the 1997 short period return for October 23rd, 97 to December 31st, 1997 has never been filled out, which means there's no statute of limitations on these tax returns because they didn't account for the initial period, which is a crucial period for many reasons. And they probably did not get around to doing an audit, which is required under Arkansas law and Massachusetts law, and California law, New York law, Michigan law, you name it. They probably didn't. We're not going to do that.
A lot of yard work to do.
Yeah, I got some traveling to do, interns to see. They didn't get around to doing it until Bill was out of the White House, and then probably they said, we gotta get an audit here, but we don't have audits done for preceding years. Who are we going to ask? We're not going to ask Markham. We'll ask notorious BKD to do this. They're not even registered to provide these accounting services in Little Rock under the name BKD LLB. The perfect choice. So they put this stuff in, and the question's who's defrauding who? Are the BKD people defrauding the Clinton Foundation or vice versa, or is it one big fraud dance?
Right.
And I bring all that up because if you go back into the body here, we see that, was this entity, BKD LLP, aware of this? Hit this link here. That, in this time frame, starting in 2001, the Clinton Foundation was being disciplined by the state of Mississippi, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then they decided they'd lie about it. You're supposed to, when you're disciplined, you got to tell the various states where you're also soliciting, were you disciplined? And of course, they didn't do that. This is an excellent, lengthy piece. We put it up in the past before. I actually met with this fellow Greenblatt. He's a great guy, and Mark Greenblatt. And there's a lot of primary evidence in here for you skeptics that these people solicited in Mississippi multiple times, were disciplined, lied about being disciplined, lied about using Clinton Foundation funds to pay the fines, did not tell the other states about the problem, still have not told the other states about the problem, and obviously either BKD knew about this and said, it's okay, don't worry about it, nobody's going to check it, or they didn't know about it. So,
okay, so I've got the properties for this document open, and it says it was created 11/26/01.
All right, when was it modified?
Nothing listed for modified.
Yeah, we have a way of doing that. You might say, what does advanced say? Well, let's do this at another moment because we're sort of on a little bit of a roll here. So if we go back into the slide, did BKD know about the problem in Pennsylvania with O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson? If we hit this, this is a...
oh, sorry, I got to close this thing.
No problem.
They don't seem to know about much.
Department of State, before the Secretary of the Commonwealth, consent agreement and order. Sounds pretty important to me. And these people were disciplined. O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson has changed its name now, but this was a central fundraiser for the Clinton Foundation, disciplined in Pennsylvania. In New York, you're supposed to tell if your fundraiser was disciplined. You're supposed to say, yeah, I'm using a fundraiser, disciplined. Using an accountant firm, it's not allowed. And this talks about the period when it was registered, and that they solicited after not being registered. And you go to the very bottom of the thing, and it gives you the date. There you go. Yeah. 12th of November 2002. Right? This is a material adverse change. This is something that you should be telling people about. Of course, their attitude, we don't have to tell her. I mean, we're the Clintons. We do what we want. So did BKD know about this, or did they not know about it? Why haven't they reported this to states even now? How active was O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson helping Hillary Clinton with her senatorial campaign, helping other Democrats with their campaigns, helping other allied charities? with fundraising. We don't know that yet. So if we go back in, Jason, you're more familiar about this than I am, but if we hit this archive.org.web, that's the Wayback Machine.
Yep.
And using this Wayback Machine, which people are going to start doing now, I hope, our subscribers and others, we will be able to demonstrate corrupt intent, which is a standard here. When you start taking down incriminating evidence from your website page, for example at BKD, which could be happening, or LinkedIn, which could be happening with key people who are, I think, involved with this mess.
LinkedIn is involved, or just people who
have their link, but they don't
Right.
want people to understand their connection.
Taking down their own
Right.
information from LinkedIn.
It's possible with this Wayback Machine to
What
go.
would you like to look at?
We don't need to do it now, just because I'm mindful of the time.
Sure.
But just so people know, at BKD and Praxity and other places, this is something that you can do to unravel what this used to say, and at the Clinton Foundation and its affiliates and elsewhere. And it's not like you can disappear this information. You can't bleach bit the Wayback Machine.
Actually, I'm not sure that's true, but it is.
It's harder.
It might be.
So if we go then back
I'm
into...
curious, who runs this Wayback Machine? Because I have seen
It says
things.
about up there, you can probably...
I have seen things disappear from here. About the Internet Archive. It's a 501c3 nonprofit
Wouldn't you know?
building a digital library of the Internet. Interesting. Yeah, I like the Wayback Machine, but there are some strange things that have happened to it. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever looked at this. The founder, Brewster Kahle. What do you think about that, Charles?
I don't like kale. Never had it, never intend to.
Oh, it's good for you.
I'm
but
sure that's why I'm not going to have it.
Spelled differently. Anyway, interesting. Wayback Machine.
So if we go back into the, so the next page, is that the next page? I think you skipped one. No, okay, it's the next page, you're right. So we've talked before about the strange death of John Glasgow. Now, John was a young man who had started his life at BKD in Little Rock. He was a CPA, and he ended up ultimately being recruited to be the chief financial officer of the construction firm.
Ooh, I never knew he started at BKD.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, BKD is, or the predecessor firm, Baird, Kurtz, Dobson.
It's a real incestuous situation.
And so we don't need to pull these up, but for the people who are interested, this is the 2002 false audit, this is the 2003 false audit, this is the 2004 false audit that are not on the Clinton Foundation website. Here is the incorrect audit in 2004. We've done show after show about, they're miscalculating saying that the contribution to the National Archives was a cash contribution when it wasn't, thereby hiding the theft of $36 million sometime around 2004 and afterwards. We've talked about the 2005 audit as being completely wrong for many, many reasons. You can go back into our previous notes to see all that. We don't want to spend the time going back over all that ground, but we will just highlight just a few of the defects in this body of, in quotes, work, okay? In the first instance, the 2004 audit that was prepared June 30th, 2005, was still using modified cash basis accounting after they made the donation to the National Archives and Records. And it included the results of an entity called Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc., which was never lawfully organized, operated. We don't have the application for federal tax exemption or Arkansas tax exemption. And it's just an absurd fact.
Did we ever learn what Scooter Libby stole from the National Archives?
Not Scooter Libby.
Burglar, Sandy Burglar.
Sandy Burglar. We don't yet know.
We don't know what he took.
We don't.
How could they not know? Don't they know everything that's there? And I guess it's a lot of stuff.
I guess it's pretty easy to corrupt. I mean, a lot of people who work at these places, so maybe it's pretty easy to corrupt one or more of them. The thing, for people like me who are familiar with what financial statements should look like, you have an income statement, which is called a statement of activities in a charity. You have a balance sheet, which is called a statement of financial position. And then you have a cash flow statement, which checks the other two statements, and it's like a reconciliation of your checking account, basically, that shows exactly where all the cash went by category of investing, financing, operating, et cetera. And you have to produce these things. So there's, of course, that would be the thing that would highlight this massive fraud that occurred in 2004 or after 2004. So they say, you know what, we're not going to do that cash flow statement because that would allow people like me to see the fraud. Then maybe people like me won't check it the old-fashioned way, which of course I did, because you can construct a cash flow statement from an income statement and a balance sheet. We don't need to go into that. You can do it, and I've done it many times. So there's no cash flow statement. The articles of incorporation for the parent were not amended to allow the parent to control this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. So there's no authority, no valid authority to engage in this HIV/AIDS stuff, and there's no valid authority to do any work, legal authority, outside of Little Rock, including in New York, Boston, Chicago, California, Texas, anywhere internationally.
Massachusetts.
None of that is authorized, right? Then there are a series of material agreements which should have been described in footnotes in this fake audit that BKD, notorious BAD, did. There was a bond issue in 1998 in June by Stevens Inc. to raise money to buy the land that would ultimately be leased by the city of Little Rock. That should have been disclosed, the terms of that, the covenants of that bond issue.
So Stevens owns the land?
They didn't own the land. They needed to raise, City of Little Rock Parks Department needed to raise $16.4 million or thereabouts to have money available, mostly to buy land, to assemble the position that was ultimately leased to the Clinton Foundation. And that bond offering parts of it are still outstanding under the terms of that bond offering, which we have, which of course the Clinton Foundation decided not to reference and not to make note of, as BKD did as well. The Clinton Foundation was obligated to be a public charity, to be a presidential archive, and not to do all this HIV/AIDS illegal work. And so they create problems for the Stevens Inc. underwriter of the bond issue.
They love these corrupt state bonds. The Arkansas Financial Redevelopment Association also sold bonds. To
Arkansas Development Finance, yeah, I know that one, yeah.
That was bonds, wasn't it?
And they've done the same thing in Illinois for, Team Illinois. I mean, all around the country they do the same.
How has this been missed?
Well, because I don't think that it has been missed. It's just that, there's prosecutorial discretion. These are, at the time, Democratic-controlled states many times, and they say, you know what? If we want to raise money for our campaigns, probably shouldn't go after the people who are stealing the money that they're going to give to us to pay for the campaigns. So then the lease... No
sensible prosecutor, is that the...
Exactly. You got to get dopey James Homey Comey out there to exercise his lack of discretion. The long-term lease with the city of Little Rock, that should have been described. Ideally, it should have been amended in multiple filings. These contracts require the Clinton Foundation to actually be a public charity forever, right? And that means that the funds that are created, this change in net assets, should have been permanently restricted, as opposed to being characterized as unrestricted, which they were not. Then, to make it very tough for you to figure out what was going on, the foreign results of this Clinton Foundation, of course, they don't disclose what those are, either the names of the companies, the names of the affiliates, the arrangements they have around the world. And they don't produce the type of granular financial statements that should show you, or show somebody, country by country. What's the local currency? What are my costs? What are my revenues? What are my transfers in and out of the local country? When did they occur? Do I have material agreements and obligations in each country? None of that stuff, is in any of this early disastrous non-work.
I think Bill's brother is producing granular financial statements.
Yeah, right. Or financial statements from granules.
Exactly.
So another thing, the biggest asset in theory of this mess is the Presidential Library Complex and Research Center. And ordinarily, when you have a construction project as complicated as this one, the fact that you claim you spent $165 million on it doesn't mean that it's worth $165 million. You got to get an independent firm to look at it and say, well, you might have spent $165, and we're going to put this on the books at the lower of its cost or market value. So, there's not an opportunity to say it's really worth $350, and somebody should have to look at this as independent, certainly not BKD, and say, as of November 18th, 2004, the first question is, was the damn thing finished? And we know from checking with the city of Little Rock that it wasn't finished until October of 2005. So it shouldn't have been entered at full value on November 18th or by December 31st, 2004 if it wasn't finished.
Huh.
Right?
So
But-
it's almost like they had a full value in mind already.
Yeah, they were working to the full value. They'd stolen 64 million and they'd spent 101 on the construction, so they needed to have $165 million value.
It's a hell of a value.
It's a nice value. So we also know...
These are not our values, Charles.
Exactly. And we also know that the contractor payments that are specified in, I think, Schedule A to the tax returns, where they identify the big contractors, of course, CDI, where John Glasgow worked and was CFO, was the biggest. They don't add up anything close to 165 million. And BKD should have been testing that and saying, wait a minute, how is it that your property, plant, and equipment account is moved by 165 million, but you're not showing any payments to contractors to build the thing? What happened? How come you have an estimate to the city of Little Rock saying you're going to do 26 million of landscaping, which is a lot of landscaping, ought to get you a few bushes at least, maybe a Christmas tree farm for that.
Right.
And yet, there's no evidence that you paid for any landscaping. So what's going on here?
What about the Heifer Village and Urban Farm? It's funny, that tag doesn't come up anymore. I'm just playing the Strange Death of John Glasgow video as I frequently look at the map of the building, and it's interesting.
And so then we have the question of private gains around this foundation. Those would be, compensation and reimbursement of expenses to the Clinton family, especially to Ira Magaziner, who all during this period, in the early period, is operating this thing, SJS Consulting, prospecting for clients, government clients, corporate clients, etc., charging expense reimbursement. In theory, he invested $1 million in this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. in 2002. How did he do that? How did he operate things from his consulting office? How did he operate multiple charities from the same place, in theory charities, using Clinton personnel? I mean, just the whole thing, it's as if they selected BKD because they knew BKD would not look at any of this.
Well, yeah.
So here's this, Jason. We haven't shown people this before. If we hit this link, here's a show that was done about John Glasgow in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I just saw it this afternoon. Unfinished Business.
Wow.
Right. This is I forget the name of. If you go to the top of the page, Unfinished Business.
Well, Disappeared is the name of the show.
Right. It was I guess, I don't know if it was a cable show or something like that, but
Documentary.
we need to watch
crime.
this.
Yeah.
And they need to get back and finish the unfinished business.
His SUV was found abandoned in a state park day after he left his home. But they don't say anything about the Clintons here.
Well, that's because it was done in 2010, well before this episode was, I think, 2010, is it? Or 9? What is it?
Yeah, November 29th, 2010.
So after the midterm elections in 2010, this airs, and they find his remains in 2015. It's time to go finish the unfinished business.
Wow. Yeah, just his skull, right? They just found his skull.
Well, it's been in a park for a while, so there's not going to be much left.
Right, but how does the skull get separated from the rest of the,
I don't know.
Seems like maybe they dispersed him around somehow or something like that.
Yeah. So if we go back in, this is the Arkansas. There's a lot. If you Google John Glasgow, FBI and investigators, there's a hell of a lot of speculation about this. There's a file that should be reopened here.
I called his brother and they never called back.
Yeah. It's time to figure out what really happened here. Not this.
Right.
Right? So this is a lot of stuff has been written about poor John Glasgow and his family. Maybe they all want to move on, but there's no statute of limitations on murder. And if this guy was murdered, one ought to get into that a little bit. So if we go back into, see, you get that one for $20 a year. That's
Much
more.
better
That's
deal.
more reasonable, right?
Full value.
And then I wrote this piece in June, laying out what I believe to be some motives that people might have had here for wanting Glasgow dead. Those motives I wrote in June 5th, 2018, they're no longer missing. So if you read this article, you see what I'm talking about, FBI.
Wait a minute, so you're saying in June, the motives were no longer missing. Yeah.
There's a lot of information in this, a lot of links, saved a lot of work. We had the story that we did. And maybe people who know a lot about construction and among our subscribers could take a close look at this. People in Arkansas who have views, take a close look at this. Send this to the FBI.
Yeah.
This really needs to be thought through very carefully. So if we go back into the slide, go to the next page. All right, this morning, and I'd seen this Praxity around. A person who shall remain nameless, who's a great friend of the show, mentioned that a BKD person was involved with this entity called Praxity. So I hit, we go into the timeline. In 2006, Unitaid was created, which really became a way to send $650 million to the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc., even though that entity didn't legally exist. That's a real trick. That was formed September 19, 2006, and Unitaid was not so big that they shouldn't have noticed this. This was like 50% of what Unitaid did for 3 years, was to send a lot of money to an entity that legally didn't exist, and that by December 31st, 2007, had been ordered to be shut down in its headquarters state. But Unitaid said,
yeah, we're busy.
What the hell? We're we got a plan here. Ira, we like him, we like Bill, we like Hillary, they need the money, they campaigns, maybe we'll get a piece of it. Hasta la vista, baby, you get the money, right? So this is September 19th, 2006, it gets created. Then we look at the next, go back in the slide, please. And we get to this unique thing that gets created in early in November 2006. Now, what is it? Mazars, which I believe is based in France primarily, and this English firm, Moores Rowland International, launched a global alliance of independent accounting firms, which is called Praxity. And the chairman of that is somebody called William Fingland.
Does that word mean anything, Praxity?
I doubt it.
Praxis? What is praxis?
We'll get into it, I don't know. But it turns out Fingland was an important BKD man, and one of the more important pieces of this Praxity thing is BKD. Okay, so this gets created this article appeared November 15th, 2006. And if you go back into the slide, Unitaid confirms massive commitments in this executive board minute, which we've had up before. Fabien will be joining us actually in a number of days, not this Sunday, but the next one. This is a minute dated November 29th to 30th, 2006, a nice 2-day meeting in Geneva. Not a particularly good time of year to be there.
No, it's cold.
But it's Christmas, so you got lights and everything.
You go to those nice European Christmas villages and go ice skating.
Right, and here, I love this. The alternative chair apologizes for the absence of Philip Douste-Blazy, who is attending at the same time a meeting in New Delhi with President Bill Clinton to announce lower prices for pediatric medicines for HIV/AIDS funded by Unitaid. Right, so Bill's really smart about that. Hey, Philippe, rather than checking the paperwork too carefully on what the Clinton Foundation, why don't you come with us over to India with this gigantic announcement with world leaders about how great we are, and you'll be drawn right into this fraud. You'll never be able to say it's a fraud because I've got you, all over the world taking credit for what we're doing when in fact what we're doing is a fraud.
Now this might be way off, but when I've heard this, I've never seen this written before. I've always heard Fabien call him Monsieur Douste-Blazy. I thought it was spelled differently. Is this possibly some sort of French spelling change? Is there any relationship between Dr. Ford Blasey and this Blasey?
A good question. I doubt it, but
sometimes people come to the United States, they change the name at the Statue of
A
Liberty.
doozy of a Blasey, but but the point of putting this up is that this great new firm, Praxity, they probably hired, I don't know how many different image consultants say, I got a name of the firm, why do we call it Laxative? Well, that's not good. How about Praxity? Okay, that's better. We'll pay you $5 million for that name. So the point here is, Jason, that by this date, Unitaid had made a decision to send the Clinton Foundation a ton of money in 2007, And that commitment should have been recognized as an account receivable as of December 31st, 2016, with the 2006 with the reserve, which it wasn't. And there began a process by which the Clinton Foundation never validly has accounted for money that it was due. And of course, this new firm, a Marxist humanist philosophical movement. That doesn't sound good.
It's also the name of the Klingon moon that is destroyed in Star Trek that leads to the Klingons and the humans hanging out.
All right.
But there's some meaning in names. I think these guys pick these names for a reason.
So we just quickly go back.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just mindful of the time.
And I'm annoying you with these
things. No, I just want to make sure that we get. So what do you know? We hit this accounting web. How do they decide to structure Praxity? I mean, it could have been Cayman Islands thing. It could have been whatever.
The Panama Papers.
They decide to create, if you go down a little bit on this page, they decide to structure Praxity, which is, an alliance of these major accounting firms.
Marxists.
As what? A Belgian not-for-profit.
Oh, right.
Belgian not-for-profit.
How can an accounting firm be not-for-profit?
See, BKD, with headquarters in Springfield, Missouri, is one of the 10 largest CPAs in the U.S. back in 2006. It's now one of the 13th largest, so it's going the wrong way. Is the largest member of MRI and also owns Mazars Central LLC, which provides services for the American divisions and subsidiaries of clients served by European-based Mazars. We're going to learn a lot more from Fabienne about Mazars, but BKD and Mazars have some very serious problems here. This is this entity, Praxity, is supposedly a Belgian not-for-profit. Now, we can be very certain that I've done business in Belgium, and the laws are tough over there if they're enforced properly. Taxes are very high, which makes sense to have a foundation in a place where there's a high tax environment. I question why an accounting firm alliance is allowed to be a charity.
Yeah.
But beyond that, this happened November 17th, 2006, right? This is right before Unitaid makes the commitment to the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative that doesn't exist. And here's BKD and Praxity bragging about this gigantic alliance. I think some very powerful people within the alliance, Praxity, need to be asking some very tough questions of BKD. What did you know? When did you know it? How come none of your audits are actually correct? What kind of exposure does this mean, not only for Praxity in Belgium, but for the partners around the world? You know, who was doing diligence on BKD when this alliance was created? What affirmative obligations do the BKD people have to tell their partners in the alliance of these problems? How was the Clinton Foundation assignment sold to the Praxity people? You know, was it, we account for a presidential foundation, that's the level we'll operate, you know, we're a big firm, you should want to be. How was the Clinton engagement sold to these Praxity people? And what are the laws against deceptive practices and fraud in countries like Belgium? And I'll give you a hint, they're rough.
Yeah.
So this is a big find this morning. We're going to be spending a lot of time in coming days and weeks on this. And we look at this. If we look at this one, it's an extensive international reach. They brag about it, you know, Praxity. Who is it? The world's biggest alliance of independent accountancy and consulting firms, 6th largest accounting association, right? 40,000 professionals in over 100 countries. How many of you very smart people bothered to check and see whether BKD was validly organized and operated, and whether clients like the Clinton Foundation were actually charities? I mean, you're part of a Belgian charity. You've got combined revenue of $5.2 billion. That's a lot. And BKD is a central piece of this.
Wow.
You know?
Well, what? Yeah, it doesn't make sense that this would be a charity. What do they do that's charitable? They're doing the taxes for corporations.
I don't know.
Oh, is the idea that if they're doing the taxes for charities, they can be a charity?
I don't know. I don't know the basis. Maybe under Belgian law, there's some quirk that allows an entity that's fundamentally for profit to be doing characterize itself as not for profit. But be that as it may, you know, I think whoever runs Praxity, and there's a BKD person on the board of Praxity right now, should be asking some extremely tough questions about BKD's work. They should put, a team of Praxity people. Here's that guy, Ted
Dickman.
That I believe might be why don't we hit that and see if he's by chance the person. Oh yeah, he's the CEO of BKD.
Dickman.
Right.
Wow, so he's the CEO of BKD. Really interesting.
He's a member of the, yeah. So there's some serious questions that these fellow board members should be asking of Ted Dickman. And remember, that all along we've got Eric Hansen. He's the chairman of the AICPA. I think he's the chairman of an international similar body. The person from BKD who was involved setting up Praxity in 2006.
Personal friends with Truman the Tiger.
No, had an important role at AICPA as well.
It's the same. We did a show this morning with Scott Bennett about how the law firms in Washington, D.C. it's Dov Zakheim, it's Roger Zakheim, it's Eric Holder, and they're getting Scott to have this lawyer that's under their control, and now they've got General Flynn has got a lawyer from there. It's just they're corralling everybody into these things that they control, and they're able to exert control that way.
Right, but what I would say, you're right. To the extent that this entity, Praxity, has a presence in France, I would say you better put a SWAT team on this BKD matter, because you've got some huge problems as to how come Praxity and BKD did not notice that the Clinton Foundation was never authorized to fight HIV/AIDS internationally, never filled out any of its forms properly. None of this stuff actually foots. How come you didn't notice that?
I was under the impression that you and Fabian were the SWAT team and you're about to SWAT them.
That SWAT could be in process. So then we have this one. This is sort of amusing. They claim amazing domain experience at Praxity and international nonprofits. And you can't make up some of these names, right? They talk about the partner for national non-for-profit and foundation. What, you see her name down there?
Where is that?
Right below that cursor, right there it is.
Liz Dollar?
Right.
No, I mean, that's a fake name. This is like
no,
CIA.
it's her real name.
It's
her real. But it's not as good as the gentleman who was filling out the BKD tax returns for a number of years for the Clinton Foundation, whose name, unfortunately, is Ernie Skirmy.
Charles, isn't a 501c3 an American thing for taxes in the U.S.?
Yeah.
So why would an international body be a 501c3?
Where does it say that?
Didn't it say that Praxis is a 501c3?
Yeah, it said they may well have a U.S. We'll have to check and see if they have a U.S.
Isn't that a strange thing for them to be in Belgium and be talking about 501c3?
They could just be being approximate. I mean, they're evidently neither good with numbers.
Have you ever met an accountant that was approximate?
That's BKD, right? Yeah, we're approximately able to issue tax advice and whatever.
It's approximately 18 to 36 months is what it was.
A lot longer than that.
Yeah.
And then we've put up Hansen's bio before. So this AICPA had better have some real serious people on it looking at this BKD and Praxity and Clinton Foundation stuff, because you've got one hell of a case study of fraud here. Rampant global fraud.
He looks like Jason Bateman.
If you say so.
Yeah.
And then we look back into the slide there. They talk here about conflicts in this article. CPAs and conflicts of interest. I mean, I think whoever at the CPA Journal, you need to study the regulation of international charities with a focus on the Clinton Foundation and the Obama Foundation, for starters.
Is this published by the American Institute of CPAs?
It might be.
Seems like it would be, right?
Yeah. See, the AICPA Integrity and Objectivity Rule serves as the foundation, as it were, for the new interpretations. Okay, so I got to believe that this is a textbook case of massive conflicts of interest. How is BKD having probably bamboozled the Praxity alliance partners into doing an alliance in the first place, how in the hell are the very people who did the bamboozling still allowing the chief operating officer who might have been involved in taking the Clinton Foundation, assignment and blessing it, going back? How in the hell are these people having anything to do with a robust examination of what to do next with the Clinton Foundation? It's just beyond.
Well, isn't that it? That they start this alliance to get everybody involved so that when they're like, hey, wait a minute, we need to investigate this. And you're like, yeah, good idea. You've been on the board for the past 18 months. Maybe you better not.
Yeah, let's get a bigger rug to sweep all this stuff under. And then now if we hit, this is something that just the Google search results, to give, I don't know if it'll pull everything up. Yeah, this is where you just put, this is Ortel's first law, right? You take the Clinton Foundation in quotes and you put it with fraud, and how many results do you get, Jason?
Oh my, 6,350,000 in 0.33 seconds.
Exactly. If they had more time, they'd get more results. But, and a lot of this can be spurious, but I mean, to say that there's nothing here is ridiculous.
They don't tell you that 6,348,000 of these are written by you.
No, they're not. A lot of these
kidding.
are picked up by, many of them have to do with me, but these are people who've studied this independently, and no one has written, exhaustively. I mean, this Lou Rockwell's a pretty famous guy, actually, but no one's written and said, Ortel missed this and Ortel missed that. No one's done that.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
As you go through these to 22 pages in, it's still, because sometimes if you search for something, as you start to get to the end, it's not that closely related, but that does not seem to be the case here.
Right. So how come nobody's doing anything about this? I mean, it's possible that government regulators around the world have known about this for over a year in great detail. How come the governments aren't getting off their collective asses and going after these ne'er-do-wells, miscreants, to get back the kind of billions, if not tens of billions, that could be used to pay down government debts and to redress the budget deficits of state and federal and foreign governments? How come nobody wants to do this?
I don't know.
It's time to get serious about discharging your responsibilities here. And so if we go then to the next page, this is a project here. I got quoted last year. We're going to show the article saying I didn't believe the official line on Peter Smith's disappearance. Now others have different views, but the starting place I found, if we hit the first link there, there's this gentleman, Matt Tate, and I actually tweeted to him this morning. I said, I want to talk to you about this work you said you did.
Oh, he's not going to talk to you.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he's a chicken if he won't.
No, he's covering this whole thing up. I think he's pivotally involved in a cover-up.
All right, well, then it's time for the FBI. If they're going to investigate Roger Stone and Jerry Corsi and a bunch of people, Matt Tate needs to be investigated. How do we buy, here's a guy at GCHQ, do we really buy his unvarnished account of what happened with Peter Smith? I mean, what if he's making it all up? Yeah, what if what if he wrote this supposed article? If you go into this a little bit.
Well, this is where he's coming out and admitting, I read the Wall Street Journal's article yesterday and attempts to gop operative.
But if you go down here, and he's friendly with Benjamin Wittes.
Right. This is, so
a Comey, right?
Right. Basically, what Pepper Stanley and I identified in our last episode of the ongoing investigation into the strange death of Peter Smith is that these guys, specifically Matt Tate, Shane Harris. Yeah, sorry, Shane Harris.
We have a link on him in a second.
Matt Tate, Ben Wittes, James Comey, Rachel Maddow. They all seem to have worked together to create a transmedia campaign right around the time, right after Peter Smith died, to convince people that he was working with the Russians, had these emails from the Russians, and that's where the Russian collusion started. But you have emails that were not publicly released prior to that Shane Harris was unaware of, where Shane was quoting Peter totally inaccurately to what Peter had said to him, the conversation, as Peter describes it, was off the record, but then after he's dead, Shane published all kinds of things without saying it was off the record. And Shane says that Peter was dealing with Russian hackers. And I think he even goes as far as saying state hackers.
Right.
Peter specifically said they were not affiliated
Right.
with the Russian government, directly contradicted what Peter said.
And thanks for doing the work of going out there with Pepper Stanley and trying to figure out what's going on. Perhaps another trip makes sense. But if we just go down here, for one thing I was going to say, that where they identify, Tate identifies the supposed title of this thing that Peter had written.
The document that
yeah.
nobody but him and Shane Harris have seen.
Right. And it's something like a pedagogical something or other.
The thing that I find so interesting, Charles, is that these guys are using the same exact technique that internet trolls use.
Yeah.
Two different people published two different articles, and because one of them is in the Wall Street Journal and one of them is on the Lawfare blog, it feels like it's corroboration, but it's two guys pushing
the same source,
story.
Which may or may not have been written actually by Peter, right? And I don't know if this, yeah, that guy.
They're talking about Gooser for two.
Yeah, I don't know if it has this. Does this not have
Peter
the
made his pitch.
Yeah.
Pedagogical is the word?
Yeah. Pedagogical. There you go. A document was entitled "A Demonstrative Pedagogical Summary to be Developed and Released Prior to November 8, 2016." That sounds to me like something written by an English person.
Exactly.
Not by Peter Smith.
Right.
You know, and so I've asked to see this. You know, I asked the Wall Street Journal just now, and I asked the Washington Post just now, where Shane Harris currently is. I want to see this document. I want document experts to look at this document. I mean, we seem to be in the business of this animating this Russian collusion delusion. We have the Steele dossier, you know, which was cooked up by somebody, and now we have this dossier, which this dude claims Peter wrote. But why are we going to believe him?
Well, the other thing I want to reiterate is that this guy worked at Google Project Zero, which is a very mysterious team of elite hackers at Google that are ostensibly there to hack into systems and, for the benefit of the world, alert other companies to weaknesses in their systems. But who's to say it's not just a team of hackers doing Google's bidding? I find it very strange that Google CEO Eric Schmidt left the same day or the next day after Trump executed that executive order where if you're providing financial or technological assistance to human rights violations, he's going to take all your stuff.
Right.
I think there is a team of individuals working diligently to cover up the true facts of what happened with Peter Smith's death, and I think this guy is one of them.
It could well be. So if we go back into the slide, you know, I'm quite prepared to speak to that guy. We should be asking, this is an Andrew McCarthy piece, you know, Peter Smith, on the one hand we have an FBI and we have a CIA and they have a lot of people and resources and money and whatever. Don't tell me that the FBI/CIA didn't notice whatever it is alleged Peter Smith may have done, right? Just don't tell me that's not true, right? They must have noticed. If Peter Smith was patrolling on the dark web, they probably have a special division in the FBI and CIA or whatever.
Well, he was also known entity because he was always after the Clintons and everything.
Right. So just don't tell me there isn't a record in the FBI file somewhere of who might have, when did they cotton on to whatever it was that Peter Smith was doing. And I say this because this Operation Crossfire Hurricane, whenever it started, some say, I've seen July 31st, I've seen July 28th, I've seen, but you know, when did this Crossfire Hurricane start? At what point did they notice whatever it was Peter Smith may have been doing with his various associates? And who was watching this? Was Peter Strzok watching this? Was McCabe aware of this?
Well, Ben Wittes is supposedly Comey's best friend, and they were doing all the tick, tick, boom, and Ben Wittes is the editor of Lawfare blog, where Matt Tate is a contributor.
Right. So that's I think we're entitled to understand this. And my point again on Peter Smith, I'm not sitting here saying as a retired investment banker that I'm suddenly an expert on solving murder mysteries. I'll reiterate, I like to collect first edition murder mysteries and thrillers, and I have a nice collection of those. But that doesn't make me an expert on this stuff. And I'm just saying, though, that the story that's been sold to the public about Peter Smith does not ring true to me, just as one person who might have been one of the last people alive to speak to him. So I want to know that trail. I want to know what Stroke knew. I want to know what the FBI and Brennan might have known about all this stuff. I want to know who was pushing Sessions on Trump. I understand the theory that Sessions was a logical attorney general selection because he was a senator, and there was, until recently, courtesy in the Senate. The people who'd been senators generally got waved through to cabinet positions, but Sessions had to fight for the position. I want to know who pushed President Trump to nominate Rosenstein, because he is the last person I would have selected to control the FBI, given what we now know about Crossfire Hurricane, what we know about Rosenstein in missing the Clinton Foundation frauds, misstating his resume, not going as far as he should on Laureate, not getting Ranbaxy under control the way he should have, not noticing the connections back to the Clinton Foundation. And there are just so many screw-ups involving Rod Rosenstein. So I want to know, I think the president should know, who were the people pushing Rosenstein? There had to be multiple candidates for this job. So how did that whole process go down? Who was shepherding this through? Why did Rosenstein get selected? And then on this question of Mueller as special counsel, I mean, Al Capone was dead, so we couldn't put him in as special counsel, but given these links here to the Hillary R. Clinton gigantic investigation that into mishandling that didn't get things right, that more importantly, the William J. Clinton Foundation, where Mueller was briefed on the Clinton Foundation elements of the fraud and didn't take that job home to where it should have gone. Here's 26 different dumps now on this Hillary R. Clinton mishandling thing. How come the FBI was not allowed to do its job here and tag Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin and Cheryl Mills and many others for what seems to me, as a non-expert, to be an open and shut case of mishandling classified information? Who was running interference there? How much might Mueller have known after he was out of his FBI slot to what was going on in here? How much did Mueller know about Russian actual conspiracy to steal secrets and to do crooked deals with politicians in both parties? How much did he know about that? And who in the hell decided, the person we're going to put in here to be special counsel is somebody who has obvious conflicts, in my mind, not as a lawyer. Then on this question of who hired this Shane Harris guy, I mean, I'm not bragging, but I know a number of people at the Wall Street Journal, and the standard for hiring is generally pretty high. Who was pushing Shane Harris into the Wall Street Journal from the Daily Beast, which is not, Daily Beast is not well known, or is not known for being a financially sophisticated.
Daily Beast is known as a piece of crap, as far as I'm aware.
Well, I'll leave it. That's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. In this country,
let's talk seriously about this for a moment. He arrived there in May of 2017.
Right.
This whole operation with Peter Smith and the misreporting on his death took place, obviously, there in June of 2017, and Shane Harris is already gone from the Wall Street Journal, and he now has a cush job at John Podesta's paper of record, the the Washington Compost. The Jeff Bezos newsletter.
Yeah, well, we've been talking to some of the people now at the Washington Post who strike me as being very professional, some of them, but they're always in big organizations, bad apples. I take your point. But Shane Harris's source, supposedly, principal source for this story, was Matt Tate.
Exactly. So it's exactly like the fake dossier. And Tate is coming from GCHQ. So he's the source, and then it gets written about in Daily Beast. We look at
in WC.
Okay, so it's the stand-in now. I'm almost looking at it, it's like Wall Street Journal is to Daily Beast as New York Times is to BuzzFeed. Matt Tate is to Christopher Steele. He writes the dossier, and then wasn't there, who's the guy from Yahoo who corroborated the dossier?
Isikoff.
Isikoff, right? So it's the same playbook. Same playbook. They're doing
Right.
the same thing.
Right.
And the more we've done stories on Peter Smith, there's some strange timing where the fake stories about Peter Smith come out after we go and speak to the manager of Walmart and show the surveillance footage and talk about how the inventory system for Walmart that day showed only one canister of helium in stock, but the crime scene photo from Peter Smith's hotel room shows 2 helium canisters there. There's only one Walmart that the bus drives to. He had no car, no rental car.
Right.
How did he
It
get
just
that?
it doesn't ring true. Especially, I never met Peter Smith in person, but I spent a lot of time on the phone with him, a lot of emails back and forth, and he struck me as a guy who was not, at least in our discussions, impulsive. He was cautious. He would think things through. He loved to go examine issues from this perspective and that perspective. Do we really think we've got the truth here? Let's think about this way and that way and another way. And he was a gentleman at that point. He was 81 years old. So the other thing I don't get, and it was in our recent discussions where somebody said that on the receipt, it's like, I think what I'll go buy, mind you, he made these purchases, or somebody made the purchases several hours before I spoke to him on the Saturday evening before his death. I spoke to him from New York. He was in the Midwest. He decides to buy, I think what I'm going to buy before I take my own life is a canister of helium and an enema. It's like,
It's odd.
that's just a little bit odd.
It is.
It doesn't make sense to me. And I've explained before, and in the Wall Street Journal pieces, and there'll, I think, be some more videos coming out, I've explained in depth, and in a video I did with you, several videos I did with you, my specific reasons why I don't think we know the full story yet on Peter Smith, and we deserve to know it.
Yeah. I have that Walmart receipt right here, Charles.
All right, what does it say?
Well,
Yeah, enema 2-pack.
in case the
Two-pack
first one doesn't take, I guess.
Helium jumbo. I mean, I bet you, and what are these pliers? 8-inch pliers?
Yes, there were 2 pliers on the helium tanks, which he's not seen purchasing in the video. Maybe we should bring up that video.
Well, wait, let's stay on this for a second. This is in Rochester, Minnesota. What time does it say there? Was there a time?
Well,
I think there is a time towards the bottom. Yeah, 12:53, which is 2 o'clock in the afternoon my time. I speak to him at 4:30 his time, 5:30 my time. And I've just come back. He didn't say to me, Charles, I just came back from Walmart. What a great place. Whenever you need to get a 2-pack enema and 2 sets of pliers and helium, Walmart in Rochester,
spot.
That's your spot.
This is the surveillance video from Walmart, and the manager of the store recognized this individual. That's Money, who is an Asian guy who goes by the nickname Money. He's part of their security team, their loss prevention team, and it seems like it stopped playing.
Where's the 2-pack enema?
That's just it. Oh wait, this is somehow not the full video. Let me see if I have another.
But it's just, I would hazard a guess that out of all Walmart's receipts, the number of people, there's probably nobody else in the history of Walmart has ever said this. I'll take 2 pliers, 1 helium, and a 2-pack enema.
I'm not sure if he understands how to administer an enema, but the pliers seem excessive. But joking aside, because it's not funny, where is that stuff?
Is it that thing with the red thing on it there?
What thing with the red thing?
What's that?
This?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that look like?
I don't know. Anyway, my point here is that I didn't make a big deal out of the Peter. I didn't write the Shane Harris piece. I was prepared. When I got an email from one of our mutual friends shortly after Peter's death that he died in Minnesota of a health problem, I was prepared to walk away and just say, I'm so sorry to hear this. I don't need to know anything more.
old guy. Seems like it could.
Yeah, that could have happened. But, you know, so then here's something that's really interesting. This, I noticed, if we hit this New York Magazine, I don't know if you got a chance to read it because you were busy yesterday, but this is a piece by Jonathan Chait, who's a left-leaning guy in New York Magazine, which is a left-leaning publication, that picked up on the Wall Street Journal piece.
Yeah.
And if you notice, if we go down the page a little bit, yeah, here we go. Saturday, the Wall Street Journal updated one of the most curious side plots. Many new details. Keep going a little bit down. Got in touch with somebody who spoke with Smith, namely me. I say Mr. Smith sounded excited because he did. And then here we look at this. As Betsy Woodruff reported earlier this summer, and as Ryan Goodman noted, Mueller recently added to his team Catherine, however you pronounce that, Rakoczy, best known for her work on violent crime cases. This would support the likelihood that Mueller is investigating Smith's death as a murder.
I say that's a reach. How can we come to that conclusion just because this lawyer?
Well, what I noticed, I look at this and I say to myself, wait a minute, how did Betsy Woodruff find out about what Mueller's doing? How did Ryan Goodman find out about how did Jonathan?
We have a story coming next Tuesday or Wednesday, Tuesday that's going to address that. Because what has happened, Charles, you may recall, Larry Klayman had a FOIA lawsuit against Mueller's special counsel, gave us all the emails, and now members of the Crowdsource community, specifically people who are on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth in the Discord chat, have been spending the past 2 weeks going through all of those. And they've now put together a timeline where they've taken all these major articles and married them up to the emails and the journalists that were in communication with the special counsel's office to draw some connections between who was sharing what with who from the special counsel's office and when these articles came out.
And the special counsel's office is not supposed to be doing this.
Yes,
there's a grand jury.
Correct.
And this is maybe grand jury related stuff. And, you know, so this is, I just found it, I find it interesting that this Jonathan Chait would leap to this conclusion. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not right, maybe it's all rubbish. But this reminds me of what happened when I was trying to expose General Electric. And, you know, it took me less time to get General Electric in focus back in 2007 and 8 and 9. But once it came in focus, suddenly all these different mainstream media people would start reading these stories and want to talk to me, and we eventually, it took time to understand that the Fed rescue effort and the Obama IMLT stimulus were not going to work. But I think now it's pretty well accepted that GE is a dead duck. And GE being a lot more complicated than the Clinton Foundation understands. So this is more up here just to say, what the hell are all these journalists gaining access to Robert Mueller's team? You know, and this certainly seems to me as if potentially Mueller's team is trying to blame collusion on the dead guy.
Exactly.
You know, which that's not right. You shouldn't be able to do that. And
well, if he's guilty, you should, but they're lying about what happened to him.
Not even that, I would argue, because my understanding from multiple experts and from my own reading is the way a special counsel investigation is supposed to be triggered is there's a crime alleged first.
Yes.
They refuse to show us, you know, the allegation, the specific allegation. Rosenstein today, they have a Wall Street Journal article just came out while we're doing this, refused to testify to Congress again.
Wow.
Minutes ago, or an hour or so ago.
How can Rosenstein do that?
Well, because he got the, I don't know, the high sign from Trump or whatever. I mean, there's something, I don't know, there's something really odd with Rosenstein. What kind of a fix does this dude have over the process? But if we go back to the slide, so this is a story that Richard Pollack did July 14th, 2017.
This Daily Caller one?
Yeah. Talking, based on my talking with him.
Where's that?
And how, you know, the question is, how has it taken so long? I mean, this was out over a year ago.
Oh, it opened all the way over here. Hang on one second.
Where's that?
It's up here in Arkansas.
Uh-huh. Whoa, how come it has no Facebook shares?
I don't know.
Weird. It's almost as if they suppressed the story.
Huh. So this is from 2017.
Right. I hopped on this pop right away. We were starting to do videos together. I think we did one on Peter Smith around this time.
Well, because just for the benefit of those watching, when we did our first interview on the roof here, you had just received the phone call that Peter Smith was dead.
Right.
So it sort of organically became a major part of the subject of our conversation.
Right.
And we've just been investigating it more and more since. A member of the Crowdsource community, namely Pepper Stanley, lives near there, found a lot of this evidence, brought it to us, etc. It's interesting.
Yeah, people should read the Daily Caller. It's a good, and
Absolutely.
specifically any work done by Richard Pollack, who does great work.
Yeah.
But
Troopergate. That's where Peter Smith first became known.
Sure.
Was that he was involved in revealing aspects of Troopergate. So yeah, it stands to reason that the FBI would know who he is and what he's up to.
Right. So then the question is, you've been following the Awan scandal, and he gets off with a wrist slap, right?
So upsetting.
And
why are they reporting on this now, though? That happened.
This is August 23rd or whatever.
Yes.
But and I've met this Frank Miniter guy, he's a good reporter. But here you're throwing the book at Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen and Imran Awan. Nah, nothing.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, because here's a guy who we have a lot of evidence was warehousing data in a server in an air-conditioned, according to his attorney, unregistered shed at 4809 Sprayer Street. And then these two other guys are just, Paul Manafort has already spent more time in solitary confinement than Imran Awan ever will.
Right. So this is just, nothing gets people, fair-minded people across the political spectrum, more upset, validly upset, than the unequal administration of the law. And that's what we have here. We have, Imran Awan skates. Why? His clients are Debbie Wasserman Schultz, principally Democrats, Xavier Becerra out there, now the Attorney General of California, and he skates, because you got to protect Democrats when they do this kind of stuff. But Manafort, because he has high living, Hillary has high living, but he gets tagged, Cohen gets tagged, we'll see who else gets tagged. But mind you, this is happening under the Trump administration. This Awan thing.
Why is he allowing it?
I don't know. Why is it justice? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Not good.
So if we go back in, we're almost done. We're record time for a big set of topics to talk about. We look at this exercise here. If the FBI wanted to do some productive work,
Yeah.
here's the thought.
In between texting.
Yeah. Just look at this supposed list to the Clinton Foundation. We go down the list a little bit and this is greater than 25 million. So the first question is, why did they pick greater than 25 million?
It's a huge
Because
number.
the Unitate is 650 million. Why didn't they say greater than 100 million or greater than 500 million? Because they didn't want people to know just how active Unitate was. In the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, it's greater than 50 million. Frank Gister, we don't really know, it's greater than 100 million. Counting Elevate Social Businesses, that's got a ring to it. Bill and Melinda Gates is greater than 100 million. Why did they arbitrarily pick greater than 25 million?
And this is the Swedish postcode lottery.
That's the Dutch.
Oh. All these lotteries are investing. That's like a money laundering scheme on top of a money laundering scheme.
Well, yeah, and to be clear, we've done several presentations on those lotteries. They're for-profit enterprises. The contract is given by the governments of these countries to a for-profit enterprise that, out of the goodness of its heart, gives 50% of the lottery sales to charity, keeping the other 50% for themselves. That doesn't sound too much like a charity to me.
What about the lottery winners? I guess that's just the profits you're talking about.
Yeah. And the profits are calculated not noticing too carefully how high the marketing expenses are that are paid to allied companies of the promoter of these, and it's just a complete scam.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, when Quinn Michaels and I were working together, we came across, what was the guy's name? But it was the Dawsons, Mark Dawson, and his brother had a company that was doing marketing almost exclusively for lotteries. And they were tied to Diana Dors, who was involved in the Process Church and all these sex parties in Hollywood and everything. And it's like, now we're talking about Harvey Weinstein and the Clintons, and it's like, it seems like some of these relationships are maybe a lot older than we realize.
Yeah, again, with lotteries and with entertainment, and you know the entertainment world far better than I do, nobody really knows how many tickets are sold, how many books are sold, how many CDs
anytime you make a deal to sell your movie, you're getting screwed.
Right, exactly. And similarly, nobody really knows how many lottery tickets are sold and whether, an arrangement isn't made to, like, let's have this guy over here win the lottery every 2 years, and he can kick back, Nobody knows any of that.
Oh, it would be so easy to do that, to pay someone for fraudulent lottery.
Well, there have been stories about it. I saw one recently on television about it.
Huh.
And so if you wanted to actually just do this properly, here's a thought, IRS and FBI, you take each of these entities and you go to the IRS and you say, listen, enough of the crap, take the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, let's go and add up year by year, as we've done in multiple presentations, how much they say they gave to the Clinton Foundation. Then let's look in the Clinton Foundation books, and then we'll notice the differences. And there always are differences. There shouldn't be any differences, okay? And you could do that, and there's a lot of information the Clintons have disclosed. There's more that the IRS would have. And you can do the same thing here with the CGI commitments to action, which are hysterical. If you go down the page here, let's go further down. It says, find a commitment, search all commitments to action. Now, I'm going to pick one out of the blue here. I don't know that this will, here you can support CGIU, something that does not exist. Never the Trump University has gotten a lot of flack. Clinton Global Initiative University has never been validly organized anywhere in the world. Let's put in here leapfrog and see if anything comes up. It's one word.
Oops.
Four commitments to action.
Should I make it one?
Yeah. All right, let's see what those 4 commitments to action are. 7. Microfinance, leapfrog investments committed to creating and sustaining 50,000 jobs and livelihoods in Asia and Africa through its portfolio companies. Leapfrog investments.
Weren't AIG the ones responsible for the 2008 mortgage crisis?
In part. But if we hit that, all right, so now leapfrog investments, right? Let's see if leapfrog investments, if there's anybody at leapfrog investments who has a tie to Clinton Health Access Initiative, Inc. Why don't we Google Mustafa Leavenworth Bakali, not on this, it was spelled P-H-A. And again, this is a name you couldn't make up and get into a movie script.
Leavenworth?
As in the prison, L-E-A-V-E-N. B-O-A-K-A-L-I. B-O-A-K-A-L-I. B-A-K-A-L-I. Let's see what pops up here. Mustafa Bakali. Okay?
Oh, it says Clinton Health Access Initiative right there.
Right. He was the president, according to this, president and chief operating officer of the Clinton Health Access Initiative. Okay, based in Dorchester Avenue.
But didn't I go there?
Yeah, and if you go down the page, is this it? It has other things that he did. Okay, he was one of the co-founders of Leapfrog Investments, which is an entity based in Mauritius. I've been to Mauritius. It's a nice place, but it's like really far away from here. You have to go to, I went London, Bahrain, Seychelles Islands, and then I got to Mauritius. And so this dude he was advisory board member of Leapfrog, board member of this gold royalty thing, on the board of this Focus Pharmaceuticals, chief business officer and member of the management board of Intercell, director of NAPO Pharmaceuticals, founder of Indelivax International, and president and chief. How do you hold all these positions down? And maybe not all of them. Leapfrog was an overlapping one. But in Leapfrog, what they're doing is they're investing donor money, some Clinton Foundation donors, some prominent donors, in an institutional fund into Africa, into Asia, where the Clinton Health Access Initiative is operating. So don't tell me that he didn't go into like Mozambique and say, on the one hand, I could give you some money for this drug problem. On the other hand, you got this gold project over here or oil project or something else. Why don't you, with this hat, give me a gold thing, and with that hat, I'll give you some cash, and we'll call it philanthropy. I mean, so it's just the FBI and these investigators around the world and journalists who are interested in doing real work need to go through these 3,000 commitments to action for the Clinton Global Initiative, something that never was validly organized or operated anywhere in the world, and examine these type of things where people are working inside the Clinton Health Access Initiative, making money in other ventures, not disclosing these related party transactions as is appropriate, and going from strength to strength as philanthropists. So with that, I know we're a little bit over time, but
we're never over time, Charles. We're here to conduct this program as is necessary, and that was a good one for sure. Definitely want to thank you for preparing all of that information. I am very curious to see the attention swirling around Peter Smith. It was interesting to see who began reporting about Peter Smith right after I made that trip to Minnesota, where you and I appeared with Pepper Stanley on a show about the cold case Crowdsource investigation, where the police detective who was in charge of that investigation when it was open in Rochester, after our off-the-record conversation, told me that we have more evidence about this death than they do.
that's not reassuring.
Well, I mean, but you can understand how that works. It's a small-town police department, 81-year-old guy dies. Either, I mean, I'm not going to say that the police are covering it up. I have no evidence to indicate that, but whoever has staged that crime scene, perhaps, presuming that it was staged, knows enough about police procedure to say this will be sufficient to get them to say, there's a suicide, 81-year-old guy, nobody's ever heard of him, off the books. That's the way, I think the police just wanted to get it out there. He actually made it clear to me that he said, you need to understand, this is a small town, we have a limited number of officers, limited amount of resources. They can't go doing murder investigations for an unlimited amount of time. They got other crimes happening, other things they need to do. And the people who want to do things like this, if there are people who want to do things like this, I think they know where and to whom this type of thing can be done and how to do it.
Amazing. But again, hats off to the art department. Hats off to some in the mainstream media, actually, specifically to Shelby Holiday and to somebody who at present will remain unnamed at the Washington Post and elsewhere. You know, it's good that people are actually now, years later, maybe looking at some of these important facts, but I would warn people that Jason and I and others connected to Jason and to me have not exactly been idle in this period, that there are a lot of governments around the world that know about the Clinton Foundation issues, and people are going to begin asking questions of our government officials. You've been having a lot of information in your files, you know, how come you're not doing anything here? You're happy to finance this Russian collusion delusion mystery tour. How come you're not protecting the many donors in high-tax states and taxpayers in high-tax states and countries from being ripped off by Hillary and the bandits? So with that.
Yeah, Hillary and the bandits. All right, well listen, Charles, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for watching. Definitely want to remind people to visit patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Had a great episode of More Pain last night that you can only see on Patreon. And tomorrow we've got Kevin Shipp, the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp at 7 p.m. Eastern. So get over to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, sponsor the show, help us keep going, and also enjoy that exclusive content only on Patreon. See everybody tomorrow.